Jurors entering, all rise. Thank you, everyone. Please be seated. No issues? Thumbs up from everybody? All right, very good. Jackman, you may continue your inquiry, sir.
Thank you, Judge. Detective, before we broke for lunch, we were going to discuss State Exhibit 64A, some deleted internet browser searches off of the defendant's iPhone.
Okay.
And let's start with in time, the one that's furthest in distance from that.
The oldest one.
The bottom, the Wells Fargo.
Okay. I'll use the pointer. December 6, 2016 at 1:47 p.m. and then some odd seconds, there were two inquiries to Wells Fargo. Tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury what the significance of that is.
Yeah, can you tell?
Based on the investigation, I was directed by detectives to look for certain things. I was told that Marcia Soul uses Wells Fargo Bank as her investment bank.
That was the Ms. Soul's investment bank.
Yes.
And so on the deleted internet searches on 12/6, you have found that the defendant searched for Wells Fargo.
Yes.
And on the 12/6, that is 4 days before the deleted iChats from Ms. Soul's device on 12/10, in which there was, at least on the iChats, discussion about changing the beneficiary.
Yes. And I understand that was with Wells Fargo Financial Advisors.
Okay.
The next item we have is on.
Let me stop you there. I mean, so the search was actually predated those iChats that were deleted off Ms. Soul's.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Sorry.
Let's go to the next.
And the reason why I feel this is germane to the investigation is this search here on December 7th at 11:21 in the morning, how to turn on an Apple computer. If you're not familiar with the all-in-one computers, you won't be able to turn it on. They literally hide it in the back. Like
Okay.
I have a couple of them in my lab. I know to reach into the bottom and feel for the button, but otherwise you could sit there and scratch your head and look at this thing all over and grab your phone and look it up. So
And Ms. Soul had an Apple computer.
that's exactly what she had. She had an Apple all-in-one and the buttons in the bottom left.
Okay. Then on 12/9.
12/9, Consulate Healthcare, Sarasota. I understand through the investigation that's a place that was looked at for Ms. Soul to possibly seek treatment. On 12/9, I was told to look for certain activity on 12/9 and 12/10 in regards to the defendant possibly using her computer to look up Morton's Market to order food for Mrs. Soul, and that is reflected there on his phone of Morton's Market. Of course, he could have been looking at home or for some other reason, but again, that's why that was represented on here. On January 4th, 2017 at 6:31 p.m.
Well, let me go back to the
jumping ahead.
educators.
Did I miss one? Sorry. 12/9/16 at 5:14 p.m. Nassau Educators Federal Credit Union was looked for, and based on the investigation of Marcia Soul's computer and another one of the defendant's devices in this phone, they tied together because that's her bank.
Okay.
She was a teacher up in Long Island, which is
Okay.
Nassau County.
And that was the bank for Ms. Soul.
Correct. I understood through investigation that was her bank, yes.
Okay.
And she had, going through her emails, she had emails from Wells Fargo Investment Bank. That's why I know that was who she was dealing with. I read her emails from Nassau Educators and so forth.
Okay, now there's several, appear almost duplicate searches about where do I hook up my rotisserie?
Yes.
Okay, and through investigation, did you learn that there was a car rotisserie purchase?
Yes.
Off Ms. Soul's PayPal account.
Yes, and that's correct. I was told that that was purchased through her PayPal. And for a car rotisserie, it actually, when you strip out the car, you can take out the motor and transmission, you can put it on there, you can paint it, flip it upside down, move it around. That's why it's a rotisserie. Picture like a chicken, but a car.
Yeah, but it actually puts a car on a rack and you can flip
Correct.
it around.
And you can flip it around and paint it and do whatever you need to do to work on that car. And those were all on January 4th, 2017. all roughly within a few minutes. Again, it could be going back and forth. You don't like the page, go back to the search, and it reloads it again.
Okay, now there's another search. Do routers save everything?
Yes, there's actually 3 searches on January 14th, 4 searches regarding a router from 1240 to 1242. That's do routers say everything after the reset, and then there's 3 of the same search. Does a router save the history once it's been reset? And being that I do router forensic in child pornography and other cases, obviously I interrogate routers on scene. I know what I look for, and I would be looking up the same thing on a router too and determining it.
You would be looking up for routers saving a history of browser
I would look and see if the router I was going to examine did have the history, which I know they do, and I know how Comcast one works, I know how Frontier one works, and how you can delete that history and what the history is. Some of it's really nothing that a normal person would understand, and it's not really inculpatory, exculpatory. It's just, it is what it is. It could have data, and the reason you could also reset your router is you can get a new IP address. Normally, you'll get the same IP address. You lease it for 24-hour spots, but there is a possibility that you could power off your router, leave it off, and when it cycles through and it contacts Frontier, you'll get a new IP address.
Now, the most recent deleted web browser search.
That would be January 15, 2017 at 11:46 a.m. Does my OpenEye DVR record with power outage?
And we're going to go into this later on about an OpenEye DVR recorded. But what is an OpenEye DVR system?
It's a home surveillance video recording system. It's a DVR for your house security.
Okay. And the actual search dealt with, does it record with a power outage?
Correct.
Okay. I'm going to show you State's Exhibit 64B. And what is 64?
64B is data copied out of the databases from the phone. This is the recents log that tracks everything that you do on your iPhone. This is from Defendant Frank Bybee's iPhone 5S Apple iPhone on the 20th of December 2016. At those times, which locally that would be 1:51 p.m., 1:57 p.m. and 51 seconds to get it local time, that the phone was used to do some internet type stuff to go to Wells Fargo Bank, and that 1605 Main Street, Suite 1200 actually happens to be the address for Wells Fargo Financial Investments right down the road here, about 4 blocks away.
For Ms. Soul.
That is her local branch for the investments. Now, it's not a regular bank. That's actually where you go for your investments, your IRA, your 401k, what it might be. They are one and the same. That's how they're linked together.
And again, that's what you found on the defendant's phone.
Yes, and that's all I found. I didn't find an email with it. I didn't find other web history. It could have been deleted, not retained, but for whatever reason, these still showed up in that totally separate file system of recents log.
And we touched on this earlier in your direct, but can you obtain emails from the iPhone backup off the computer?
No, I'd physically have to have an unlocked phone to get those emails.
Were you, however, able then to determine if the defendant obtained any emails for Marsha Soul?
Yes, when I was going through the data with Celebrate for Physical Analyzer, I did the word search for Marsha, and of course it tells me all the whatever how many things there are, and it actually keyed into 3 email headers, the regarding lines, so to speak, from the recents log, and there were 3 instances during the investigation time frame, and I don't have the exact dates and times, but during the investigation there were 3 emails that were addressed like they're to Marsha. Like when to Marsha, like when I signed my now 25-year-old son up for health care, I went on my email as I was Ryan. And when I get emails still, they're addressed to Ryan, even though they're me. There were 3 emails that said they were to Marsha on his phone.
Okay, so again, how does the defendant get emails addressed to Marsha on his phone?
Someone would have had to use his email client, his email address, and done something out there in the world as Marcia.
Okay.
Whether it's like my scenario where I was getting my kid Florida Blue Cross.
And that's why he would have 3 emails addressed to Marcia on his phone.
Yes, and again, I don't have the content. They were just spam. It was trying to sell you something,
Okay.
but it was odd. You don't normally see that.
Did you?
That's actually for their purposes for making their system work better. And the same reason for range to tower records. They're not trying to track you. They're trying to find out if they need more towers.
Okay. To verify that you obtained the defendant's records, what subscriber information did you obtain?
When I obtained the Verizon phone records, they sent them to me on disk, and they're actually password protected. And part of the password is the phone number for the defendant's account. So that unlocks it. And then when you go into the actual data sets, it actually said that it was a phone for Frankie Eugene Bybee, and it had his home address, any other contact phone numbers. It actually had all of his other phone numbers associated with his account, with his wife and a couple of his boys. It included actual information about the phone, the numbers and data that the tower needs to connect with the phone itself. And it all self-authenticated that, yes, I was looking at the phone records for Frankie Bybee. It's 941-238-8564. And again, that was self-authenticating.
Okay. What is an IMEI number?
International Mobile Equipment Identifier. And what that is when you call somebody, yeah, you're dialing their phone number. That's not what finds them on the system. Their actual serial number on their phone does. And the phone company records those. And again, you could change your phone number or port your phone to a different company and keep your phone number. That's why it doesn't matter your number, it matters your phone itself, the actual device.
So when you make a cell call, what does the phone actually do?
It's looking for that IMEI number, or depending on the technology, there's some other numbers in there we won't bore people with. But it looks for those identifying things. It verifies the phone number, and in this case, it verified it was iPhone 5S. It verified the phone number, it verified the IMEI and some other serial numbers. But again, it's making sure that you don't have some crazy cloned phone on their system that doesn't belong, and you're stealing phone calls. Or make sure that gets the call routed.
Okay, so does the cell tower locate the IMEI number?
Yes.
Okay. Approximately how many pages of documents did you receive from Verizon Wireless?
Thousands.
Okay, I'm not going to introduce thousands of pages. But did you obtain all the defendant's phone call detail records from Verizon from 10/21 to 1/13 of this year?
Yes.
I'm going to show you States Exhibit 65A
Okay.
and ask you to see if you recognize that.
I do.
Okay, what is States Exhibit 65A?
This is a printout of call detail records from the defendant's phone from October 21st all the way through January. Actually, it's past the 13th, but say the 23rd. But it was basically my entire investigation period I asked for, 10/21 to 1/23.
Your Honor, at this time, the state is moving down to States Exhibit 65A.
No objection. No objection having been heard.
So these are all the phone calls.
Correct, and the appropriate cell tower numbers.
I'm going to hand you States Exhibit 65. B and C. Do you recognize States Exhibit 65?
Yes.
Okay, what are States Exhibit 65? Yes.
What 65B is, it's Frankie Bybee calls from December 10th, 2016. What this has is the call detail records, and for demonstrative purposes, I had to add in from the defendant's phone the known contacts of who the calls were to or from.
Okay.
You'll see involved party, and then with the cell tower numbers, I had then got the physical locations of the towers where they're actually located at, and then put those on the sheet. When you get the records from Verizon, it's boring. You've got the calls, and then say the Tampa market is 8,500 lines of towers. And the defendant apparently had been through Orlando and had 8,500 lines from Orlando. And he'd been out of state, and he had ones from Atlanta, Georgia. So I had to go through and correlate this. So this is directly from their data put into one amalgamated thing instead of having to go, let's go through line 8499. Okay, so long story in that, and the same thing is this, the second one, 65C Charlie, is Frankie Bybee calls from January 11th, January 12th, with the same thing, who the call involved, in or out, how long, and then where the towers were.
Okay. So, well, let me retrieve those.
Surely.
This time instead of move the government states exhibit 65, B, and C.
No objection. Objection having been heard, 65B and C are admitted.
Detective Clay, can you tell the members of the jury the significance of State's Exhibit 65B?
The significance is on December 10th, when there was certain interaction with the victim's computer at her home with Marcia Soul's computer, is that the defendant was receiving or making calls, and I like to call one of these towers, this is tower number 262, the home tower. This tower is in a very close proximity to the defendant's home. It doesn't mean that that is always the closest tower. If the cell phone goes to the strongest signal, this just happens to be right awful close, within like maybe a half a mile from his house.
Okay.
So that's what this is. You can see that here at 8:18 in the morning, these are local times, the defendant received a call from Tanya Thomas, who is a friend of his that I understood was contracted to clean at Marcia Soul's home. And then 3 hours later, there's a series of calls at 11:02, 11:04, 11:23 that is a tower at 2049 Bee Ridge. It's a car dealership on Bee Ridge. It's within 3/4 of a mile, if that, to the victim's home. And then by 12:08, I keep saying victim, the Soul's home, his home tower again in Bradenton.
Okay, so the towers on the Bee Ridge Road, the second, third, and fourth entry, that's a tower by Ms. Soul's residence.
Yes, it's a Verizon-owned tower at Gettle Nissan at Bee Ridge and Beneva, and it happens to be the closest tower that Verizon has space on.
And that was near the time in which those deleted text messages off of Ms. Soul's iPhone occurred.
Yes, from 10:32 to 10:42, I believe, is that 10-minute window. Within that 10-minute window, now granted, that's after the fact, there's no calls in between, but at least the defendant was definitely not in Bradenton, I would say. He was utilizing that tower. His phone was utilizing tower 2049 Bridge.
Now I'm going to show you State's Exhibit 65C. And we'll go through it.
Okay.
But with respect to 65C, what is that?
65C are all the phone calls from January 11th to 12th made by Frank Bybee's phone, and me adding in, of course, the involved party. Deputy Tim Underhill there was his personal phone that called in, and there's a seizure duration, which is the entire amount of the phone call, and of course we have the date and time, which I skipped over, and then the tower number and location. Sorry.
The seizure duration, is that in seconds?
That's in seconds. We'll see later some other phone records to another company, which seizure duration means how long it rang, but Verizon records a phone call in seconds from right when they make the phone call. And that's what we have is, and I'll point out the home tower 262 again at 53rd Avenue East. And then, and this is actually 8:50 in the morning, and we go through time here.
I'm going to go through. Second page, the records on
that gets into the afternoon. We have the military time there.
There's a top entry.
Okay.
There's a phone call from, is that Marianne Dombro?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And how long a call is that?
1,499 seconds.
Okay.
Good with the mental math. That's a long time.
Okay. So if you divide by 60, that would be how many minutes?
24, 25 minutes. Spitballing.
Almost 25 minutes?
25 minutes. Oh, good guess.
Okay.
25-minute phone call, and it was from and ended at his home tower. So I would assume that he was in close location or proximity to his home, or at least that tower.
Okay. Now, there are several calls with Troy King.
Yes.
Okay, so can you
Yes.
go through those?
He made a phone call out, and that's Troy King's phone number. I'm getting to know all these 3130536. I can spat them off. Troy King's phone number, he called out to Troy King at 4:23 p.m. for 1,315 seconds, and they were both at his home tower.
Okay.
And then we move on to,
So the defendant is calling to Troy King.
he's calling out to Troy King.
Okay.
I'm misrepresenting, he's calling Troy.
And then there, right after that call, there's another call of what, 27 seconds?
27 seconds. Of course, I couldn't tell if the call completed. That could have been an incomplete call, but there was a 27-second phone call at 16:45 hours or 4:45 for normal people, beginning and ending at his home tower.
Okay. And then there are two other Troy King phone calls, and you go through that.
That's forwarded to voicemail. And then this one is a call out to Troy King for, double that. That's a really long call. That's like an hour.
29, 57, divided by 60.
58 minutes maybe.
49 minutes?
Long time.
Okay.
And that's again from the home tower 262. And then there are other phone calls. I know I'm jumping ahead. This is Philomena Pereira, another witness in the case. And it's a call out to her at 18:32, 6:22 p.m., 31 seconds. Don't know if it completed or not, but those were both from his home tower.
So there's a call from the defendant to Philomena Pereira.
Correct.
Okay. And that occurred at what time?
That was at 6:22 p.m.
Okay. And for 31 seconds. And there were, now let's go through the other phone calls.
Okay. After that, there's a call in from Troy King at 8:29 p.m., 92 seconds. That probably connected, otherwise I would assume it would go to voicemail, but I don't have any data. Both from his home tower as well. Then we have a return phone call out to Troy King at 8:43 p.m., 70 seconds. And I'm assuming by that duration that it also connected. And at the beginning, it ended his home tower.
Okay.
So they both were there.
And now the last, let me just...
You can move that up a tad, please. The next phone call in sequence, surely, and then we got all of them. As long as lazy jury can see that all the way down there. The very next phone call in order, I could have put Carson Plank, but that's Deputy Carson Plank's personal phone. He called out to her at 8:44 p.m., 874 seconds. It starts at his home, but then it moves over, if you'd be so kind as to move it over. Tower 716 is a tower at 4916 Lena Road. And what that is it's State Road 70 and 75, and it doesn't even look like a tower. It's one of the disguised ones. It looks like a white, really tall pole. It's about an 80-foot tall pole.
Okay.
But that is another cell tower there. So what it shows is when he finishes this call at 8:43, or his phone finishes the call, within a minute later, a phone call is made from the tower by his home, and then the end of the phone call connects with the tower at I-75 and State Road 70 in Bradenton.
Okay. So the call was to Deputy Carson Plank?
On her personal phone.
Okay, and that's her personal cell phone number?
Yes, it is.
Okay, and what time there was a call to Troy King at 2043.
Yep, 8:43 and then at 8:44. So then how that started and ended would be a minute. Starts to Carson and finishes out by I-75 and State Road 70.
And that call for 874 seconds to Deputy Carson Plank.
Like 14 minutes and change.
Okay.
Something like that.
And you indicated a cell tower start location and an ending location.
Correct.
Okay. So when he finishes the call, the cell tower that is connected to it is on the Wiener Road.
Yes, it's much further away. It's actually, you'd have to pass his home tower, physically go past it eastbound towards the interstate to get to this tower.
Would it be consistent with someone who's in that Starbucks parking lot at Lowe's by State Road 75?
Yes, and it's also consistent with the range to tower location data, which we'll talk about.
Yeah, well, and we'll get to that. Okay.
Yes, it is consistent with someone that would be at any of those shopping places around the interstate, should have used that tower because there aren't any real other Verizon towers within a close proximity to 70 and 75.
Okay. Now, the bottom two entries on...
The two blanks, so to speak.
Yep. They're from Troy King.
Yes.
Okay. And it's at, and I'll convert it from military time, 10:33 in the evening.
Yes. And those were confirmed via when I actually served the search warrant on Verizon for Troy King's phone records to know he actually made that call. And yet that's why it says forward, not in or out. It would go 3 seconds, it rang, it went to voicemail directly with no towers recorded.
Okay, and there's no tower information. Why is there no tower information?
It's my opinion that the phone was off.
When you say off, physically turned off.
Not powered on, turned off.
Okay, so not capable of receiving.
Correct.
And with a powered off phone, can you geolocate someone then with a powered off phone?
No.
Would a deputy with the Sarasota Sheriff's Office know that you can't geolocate someone with a powered off phone?
Objection. Speculative.
Sustained.
Detective, is there training to deputies with respect to geolocating missing persons?
Yes.
And what type of training do deputies receive with respect to geolocating witnesses?
I was a training officer on the road, not in patrol, when I was in traffic, and I obviously discussed this with recruits. That's part of our training curriculum of how to find people. Obviously, anybody knows you find them on their phone, but as a detective, I was actually a training officer training new detectives when they came on board, being a senior guy at some points, to train them of how to find people, whether it's a missing person. I've tracked people on actual homicides that were on probation and should have left their house, and their phone shows them coming up to do the murder or whatever it might be. But this was normal course of training and procedure as a field training officer, detective, to train new detectives how to do their job. Yeah, anybody knows you're looking for a person, you're going to look for them on their phone, you're going to ping their phone.
So is it fair to say this training would be common with respect to Sarasota Sheriff's officers and deputies?
I would say any law enforcement officer in the country would get this training, but yes, specifically to Sarasota deputies or anybody that I train, we would discuss that.
Okay. And when a phone is turned off, you can't then locate them?
As far as I know, not with any of our current capabilities now.
Okay. There's some other phone calls on the 12th. Pull it down.
Thank you.
You go to the top entry.
Okay. This is the morning. It's in 24-hour time, so it's 6:15 in the morning. This was a call forwarded. I believe that's the dialed number is what that is. So this was Plank calling in at 6:15, and it goes to voicemail. It rang for 27 seconds, and the defendant's phone was near his home tower in Bradenton at this point.
Okay. And there's some other phone calls, and I see Philomena Pereira.
Yes.
And does the defendant call Miss Pereira?
Yes, he calls out to Philomena's cell phone, which I seized and examined during the course of the investigation. I physically seized it from her at 9:37 in the morning, and he's, again, his phone is utilizing his home tower.
Okay, then again, does he receive a call from Marianne Dombro?
Yes. At 12:13 in the afternoon, he receives a call in for 354 seconds, and then it's hitting on these towers here. Awkward. I messed that up. I shouldn't say 262 right there. But it's Tower 88. That's actually, people that know the circus people, that's the show folks tower at Lockwood Ridge and DeSoto.
Now, the last call, is there a call received from Deputy Carson Plank?
Yes, at 5:56 p.m., there's a phone call in for 433 seconds from Carson Plank. It starts way out east, the 9300 block of Fruitville Road, and it ends out there at 9300 block of Fruitville Road. That's by where Moat Marine's little fish farm is, roughly.
Technically, I'm going to show you States Exhibit 66A. And 67. 66A. Should be 66.
Okay.
What are States Exhibits 66A and B and 67?
What those are is the first two things are screen grabs from a law enforcement only access website that I have the availability to go into through the federal government to see all cell towers for a certain provider. It's obviously sensitive. The public can't get this because they don't want people in infrastructure. But the first one are all Verizon cell towers within 5 miles of Frankie Bybee's home, and his home is represented. There is the nice little bubble little thing there. It's like a little balloon. And 66B these are the cell. Sorry. Yep. These are the cell tower faces for the phone calls made on January 11th during the evening from 8:43 to 8:45 p.m. And what those are specifically in reference to are the calls with Troy King at 2043 and then 2044, 45, depending on whose phone records you get with Carson Plank, showing the faces. So the way it works is we can't geolocate someone with normal tower records. We have some others that do, but they say, when this phone call was made, there's all these different antennas around it, and this is the antenna, and then roughly this is what the cone would look like. It's not 100% accurate. This cone is just generalized. Just to be clear with the jury, it doesn't mean he was absolutely there, but if I'm hitting on a certain tower, I'm sure I'm on that side of the tower.
And what's 67?
67, this is a representation actually copied right out of one of the Apple phone databases. This is from Frankie Bybee's cell phone, and this is part of the system programming that shows when certain things happen on the phone, which once we show it, it'll be real quick and simple. But that's what that representation is.
We move into evidence basically 66, A and B, and states exhibit 67.
No objection.
66A, 66B, and 67 are admitted, and maybe.
Just real briefly. States exhibit 66A.
Yes.
Tell me real quick.
This is from the National Domestic Communications Assistance Center. It's sanctioned under federal law that we can get this data. These are all the Verizon towers within 5 miles of Frankie Bybee's house. I could have done 10, I could have done 1. This is the exact geolocation. That's Frankie Bybee's house. This is tower 262 I keep referring to as the home tower. And this is tower 716 at 4916 Lena Lane or Road, whichever the two it is. That's the I-75 and 70.
I'm showing 66B.
These are the cell faces combined for those calls, being the very first call, the one for 70 seconds to Troy King, only use this tower here by the house and only use the cell face, whereas the second call to Carson Plank, that was approximately 15 minutes or however long it was, started here and ended here with this cell face.
So, again, are those cell tower faces the information consistent with the defendant being at a Starbucks parking lot on I-75 State Road 7?
Yes, the Starbucks is right about yonder, right there, where that 70 is. On the northeast side.
And that would be the cell tower that would connect.
That would be the closest tower. I still left the other towers in the area. Again, your cell phone will go to the strongest signal, not the closest signal. But, I mean, it's probably going to go to the closest, and that's why it's used probably.
And can you tell the members of the jury what the state's said?
This is another one of the databases the phone uses to keep track of itself so it runs properly. I didn't put TK in there. That's Troy King, and that's his phone number. And what it's showing is, you can move that over a little bit. It's showing some of the things that happened there. This doesn't mean somebody used Apple Maps. They could have received an email, and it had a trigger for Apple Maps. But what this is showing is that at 1:28 in the morning, there was interaction of mobile SMS, which is mobile messages, short mail system SMS, your 144 characters lower, sending from Troy.
Okay. So, let's go back to that. That's at 1:28 in the morning?
Correct, and that is local time.
Okay. You previously stated that there were 2 calls from Troy King at about
10:33 p.m. that were immediately forwarded.
Okay, and it was, you indicated that in your opinion, the defendant's cell phone was physically turned off.
That's my opinion.
Now, you see information at 1:22 in the morning.
Yes.
Okay, what does that tell you?
That's a very key thing with any cell phone, specifically with an Apple iPhone. There are a lot of things that run in the background, whether you got Windows running or you got Apple or whatever, there's stuff in the background you don't see. What this background app is, it's called a persistent handler or persistent agent. The way you get your text messages is your phone reaches out, and it reaches out to the tower. Hey, do I got mail? Do I got a message? Hey, I'm still here, and it keeps going. That persistent handler is only triggered when your phone first turns on. Otherwise, it stays on, and it wouldn't show up in the system log. The phone could have been reset, but it's my opinion that based on my training, experience, and research into this specific thing, again, this persistent handler only goes to fetch your messages, IM, instant messages, when you turn your phone on at 1:22 in the morning.
Okay, so at 10:33, you stated it was your opinion that the phone is actually physically turned off, and at 1:22, then what happens with the phone?
The phone is definitely powered back on for this to occur, and I didn't see any other instances of that happening. And even going back in time, I would have found that the phone had been on actually for a while, for probably days, like most people do. But the only instance of that persistent handler starting happened to be at 1:22 in the morning, now under the 12th of January.
Okay, and at 1:28 in the morning, what occurs?
A text message, and I'll jump to it now. The text message was not recovered. It was either deleted or for whatever reason. His phone registered. Something did come in. There was a communication from Troy King's phone. It was a text message, but it's not on the phone.
So deleted?
I would assume deleted. I would use the word assume.
Yes, but it's not there.
There's nothing there.
Okay.
Besides this remnant that something did occur.
There was a message that wasn't a phone call.
It was definitely a message. It was definitely on the IM, and that's all this IMD persistence handler does, is it pulls in your messages. It's to say, hey, I'm here.
But the content of the text is not available.
Unknown.
Can you determine if there were messages from the defendant to Troy King?
Not based on the data available. There could have been, there might not have been. I can't add what is in there. All I know is this is there. There was something received, at least one thing received from Troy King.
So you can't say whether or not the defendant sent Mr. King a text message.
I don't have anything to show that he sent him anything back.
Okay. But you just don't have information on it.
Correct.
Okay. Do you know how long the phone was actually off?
Based on the totality of everything in the phone, look at every email, every text, every app that was touched, whatever you can do with the phone calls. I know that there was the Carson Plank phone call for 1,499 seconds. That ends at 21:59 hours for sure. There's no activity, nothing on the phone at all from 21:59 on January 11th till that 1:22 a.m. on the morning of the 12th where that persistent handler is triggered. So that's the gap. January 11th, 21:59 are normal people, 9:59 p.m. to 1:22 in the morning, and then of course we see some sort of text message come in from Troy at 1:28.
Okay. Were you able to verify the same information of the phone calls off the records from Troy King's phone?
Yes, as previously stated, I obtained, well, not only Troy King's phone records, but he actually voluntarily gave us his brand new iPhone 7. And I could go through and see that there were calls, texts. He had just gotten a phone, I'll just throw it out there, it was very new. Almost everything was deleted off of there. But again, yes, the answer is we were able to look at his phone records and see that there was some stuff.
Did you verify that Mr. King and the defendant used the same tower during the call between the two of them at 20:43 hours?
Yes, Troy King's phone beginning and ended the call at 8:44 p.m. at Tower 716, which is the one at Lena 70 and 75.
Okay.
Both beginning and ended.
Detective Klay, I'd like to direct your attention to January 18th of this year about a call received on Mr. King's phone. Are you able to determine whether a device associated with the defendant called Mr. King's phone?
Yes, when I subpoenaed all the Verizon records for Frankie Bybee's account, besides his wife Heike's phone, two of his older sons had phones. They both were 724 numbers, and I think it's 724-6906 for memory. That phone call actually calls, that phone number is seen calling Mr. Troy King on the 18th.
You spoke about it briefly earlier, but are you able to determine after January 12th of this year if the defendant changed his phone?
Yes, he did.
And how was that you were able to verify that?
Based on the Verizon records, it showed that a new phone was purchased on the 15th. And then in conjunction with the Apple records I obtained via search warrant, it showed that there's the old phone he had from December 20th, 2013, that he got the new phone and, again, purchased it from Verizon, registered it through Apple iTunes on the 16th, and then, of course, we get back to the really long, drawn-out, boring stuff about his Apple MacBook Pro. You could see that they were both actually hooked up to that Apple and they were synced. They were downloaded. They were backed up. I'm assuming contacts were switched over. It would be the purpose why I would do that, but it all follows that date of January 16th is the actual switchover date.
Okay. With respect to the forensic significance of getting a new phone, does the actual content and communications, are they transferred over to the new phone?
No.
So what types of communications aren't transferred over to a new phone?
In some ways, you can pick a la carte what you do and don't want to transfer over. You know, you don't want your pictures transferred over, communications. It's definitely going to transfer over your emails.
Definitely not.
Definitely not going to transfer over your emails.
And what about text messages?
Text messages will not go over, neither will your phone logs. Basically, the only purpose of doing it, or what you would accomplish, is to copy over your contacts, your emails, your stuff, your apps. There's some apps. I know the defendant used the communication app Tango on his old phone, and it not only wouldn't back up, but he had to manually install it on a new phone. I know that because I went through his Apple records to see that that's what I'm talking about. There's certain things that literally will not let you transfer over.
What about content of an application like Facebook Messenger?
It won't transfer those over. Once you hook up, it might get some of that data, but really it's a clean slate. All those giant databases of your recents, your phone call logs, your message database, that stuff is gone.
So
it stays on the old data set.
Okay, so it's not recoverable when you do the forensic examination of the new item.
Correct.
Okay, we spoke about the defendant's phone briefly that he used before he purchased the new iPhone on January 15th and received it on the 16th.
Correct.
Okay. When was the original phone obtained?
I believe it was December 20th of 2013.
Okay. And how do you know it was the phone that the defendant utilized?
The serial numbers that are on it and in it, so to speak, actually embedded in the chip, registered with Apple. We know what that phone is. I mean, you buy it, they track it. That's the only way they can contact you in the tower. They need to know the exact device. Thank you.
What was the condition of the, and I'll call it the original iPhone, when it was obtained?
I believe, based on the physical phone itself and looking at the numbers on it, we have it as evidence item number 18. It was seized from the defendant's home. When it was initially received, it just wouldn't power on. I can work on stuff. I know how to work on stuff, but obviously got some vision issues. So I enlisted Detective Casey King to help me with the phone. Detective Casey King is not only a sworn law enforcement officer with the Sheriff's Office, actually has a side business fixing iPhones.
Okay.
So I enlisted Casey King to help me look at this phone to determine what was wrong with it.
When you say it didn't work, are you saying it wasn't charged, or?
It wouldn't even take a charge. It would do nothing. We put it in a special box to hold it and keep it from transmitting. If it did turn on, it never would. It wouldn't even register anything on the display.
Were there any signs of damage to the phone?
Yes.
Can you tell the members of the jury?
When Casey King and I took the phone apart, so you need this special little T2 screwdriver. We took it apart. Apple puts what's called a telltale sticker in it. That way, if you have insurance on your phone, or you claim there's something wrong with the phone and they look at it and it's been dunked in water, it turns pinkish reddish color, this little sticker inside on the board. When Casey King and I opened up the phone, the telltale was that pinkish reddish color.
Okay, so there were signs that the phone was exposed to water damage?
At some point, it was exposed to water, and it wouldn't work. I would make the leap to say that that's why it didn't work, but I'm just saying it did show signs of water exposure.
So you indicated that you and Detective King attempted to repair the phone.
Yes.
And by what, a new screen and battery?
I purchased a new screen and battery off Amazon, and Detective King installed them. It was pretty quick and straightforward, and the phone then would power on and take a charge and work great after that.
Okay. Were you able to access the phone, though?
No, it was locked via PIN, and we currently can't break into those phones.
Okay. Did you examine a phone that belonged to a witness named Philomena Pereira?
Yes.
Okay. Did you actually obtain her iPhone?
I obtained her iPhone, her laptop, and a Google Chromebook that actually was gifted to her by Marcia Soul from her home on February 6th of this year.
Okay. Did you then copy Ms. Pereira's iPhone?
Yes, I did. I made a forensic logical copy, as we call it, of what we could get.
Why did you do that?
To preserve the data and go through and see if there's any text messages, phone calls, obviously with the defendant, with Marcia Soul. She's friends with Marcia Soul. I believe she maybe knowed Marion Dombrow from church, just to see who was communicating with it, obviously, not just to get her phone records, but to actually see what still is on her phone or not.
Okay. And did you find an email on it from a device or Marcia Soul's AOL account, an email titled, "Give to Frank but do not open"?
Yes, that was the reason why I went and took her phone from her, because she was the original receiver of that December 22 email that said it was from Marcia to Philomena, who we took the phone from. It says, "Give to Frank but do not read or open," or whatever it said, because she wasn't sending us a copy. We're trying to get the actual email, and maybe I'm explaining, but we physically got the phone from her to actually look at the email ourselves.
Were you able to determine if she forwarded that email to the defendant?
She forwarded the defendant, and she forwarded it, I think, actually twice on the morning of the 22nd. I saw within a few seconds it was forwarded to his known email, fib59@gmail.com. There was some other forwarding of it later, not really something to talk about here, but it was forwarded a bunch of times throughout. She actually had even done screenshots and taken pictures that she tried to forward to Detective Whedon.
Okay. During your examination of her phone, did you examine messages between Ms. Pereira and the defendant?
Yes, I did.
Okay, Detective, I'm going to show you two documents, 6 Exhibit 68A and States Exhibit 68B.
Thank you.
Do you recognize those documents?
Yes, these are Celebrate extraction reports for the Apple iPhone belonging to Philomena Pereira. And the very first one, 68B, is a representation of one single text message on January 11th. And then the rest of it is Frank Bybee's phone. So meaning the one single text message is from her phone with Frank, and the 110 messages is this whole conversation thread between Frankie Bybee and Philomena.
Okay.
Their iPhone, so it uses iChat.
So at this time, Your Honor, the state will move down to 68A and B.
No objection. Sorry.
No objection having been heard, it's quite all right. Objection having been heard, 68A and B are admitted and will be published.
So again, 68A is the entirety of the iChat.
From Frank Bybee's side.
Okay. From Frank Bybee's.
Yes, sir. I don't think she put him in her phone as Super Dad Frank Bybee. So.
I'm going to show you States Exhibit 68B.
Okay.
Can you read it, or do you want me to?
I'm good.
Okay.
Again, this is from her phone, and she has Frank Bybee in her contacts with his known phone number.
Okay, 1 second. Okay.
And it's specifically an outgoing text message from Philomena to Frank Bybee at 5:23 p.m. UTC -5, which is their way of saying it's local time. So this is our local time here. And the actual context of the message, the actual data sent is Marcia's home, upset with Mary Ann, call if you have time later. So this is the evening before the Troy King and the Carson Plank
Well,
calls.
same day.
Same day, yeah. It's earlier that evening. You know, that's at 8:43 and 8:44. This is 5:23.
So the defendant receives an iChat message from Ms. Pereira at Marcia's home.
Correct. We need to look at the other.
What's that? The entirety?
Yeah, because it's not there.
What's that? Oh, I didn't get to that one. Sure. Sorry. Now, again, State's Exhibit 68A is what?
That's all the conversation between the two of them, meaning Frank Bybee and Philomena Pereira, the whole undeleted conversation thread.
I'm going to turn to the last page.
And again, this
is State's Exhibit 68A off of the defendant's
yes,
device.
yes. Because he's Superdev Frank Bybee and she's Philomena A. Pereira. There's a gap from the 9th to the 12th. The message is not within the defendant's phone.
So on 68B, there's a iChat from Philomena to the defendant saying Marcia's home.
Correct. On her phone, but not on his phone.
So it was actually deleted from the defendant's phone.
I would presume it was.
Okay.
If it went through, it's not there.
So the chat from Philomena to the defendant saying that Miss Soul is home is nowhere in that iChat.
Correct.
And is it your opinion that he deleted that?
It was either deleted or not received. I would think it was deleted.
You indicated that you examined a number of devices either belonging to or issued to the defendant in this case.
Yes.
Did you examine his sheriff's office iPhone?
Yes, I did.
And how do you know it was the phone issued to the defendant?
It actually had his fbybee@scgov.net email for his Apple iTunes account. It was his known phone number, 915-0411. I know his number. I looked it up. I verified it. It was a serial number that our IT department even issued to him, verified it, and I actually also subpoenaed, actually I had to serve a search warrant on Verizon for my own sheriff's office records to do that.
Okay.
I don't ask, I just do search warrants.
What significant forensic information did you discover on the defendant's sheriff's office issued iPhone?
I believe it was only one thing. It was actually Google was used via the normal Apple Safari to look up something germane to the case on December 22nd.
Okay, I'm going to show you States Exhibit 69. Do you recognize States Exhibit 69?
Yes, I do.
What is States Exhibit 69?
On December 22nd at 3:25 p.m. local time, the defendant's sheriff's office issued phone was used to look up Dr. Lerner, Sarasota, Florida, which through the investigation I understand is Marcia Souls, one of her treating physicians.
So, Your Honor, this time to say we moved down in States Exhibit 69.
No objection.
No objection. 69 is admitted and may be published.
Can you tell the jury what States Exhibit 69 is?
That's a representation of the data directly copied out from the database from his sheriff's office issued iPhone 6. And verbatim, it was typed in the lower case, Dr. Lerner, Sarasota, Florida. That's the same date that another email was sent. That's the Give to Frank one, was on 12/22.
Any other information of investigative interest found on the sheriff's office phone?
I don't recall. I don't believe so.
Okay. Now I'm going to turn to Deputy Carson Plank's cell phones.
Okay.
Okay? Did you examine Deputy Carson Plank's cell phones?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Did you forensically examine, well, how many phones did you actually look at?
2 iPhones. One was her sheriff's office issued iPhone 6, and then the second phone was her personal phone. It's a iPhone 6S Plus, I believe. It's the big one.
Okay. Let's discuss Deputy Plank's sheriff's office issued cell phone.
Okay.
Was there any communication between Deputy Plank and the defendant during the period of 10/21 to 1/23 on the work phone?
There was a very sparse bit of communication, but it appeared to be work-related. There was nothing really right around the time of the offense of January 11th, but there was a little bit of here and there.
Were there any other artifacts on her phone pertaining to the defendant of investigative interest?
Well, there were 2 things. One is in the recents log, right about 1800 and some odd hours, which is 6 p.m. on the 11th. Her phone actually recorded that she accessed his contact, meaning she went to her phone, she went to the contacts and specifically looked up his contact, which in that case, only his sheriff's office phone number was listed in her sheriff's office phone, not the personal. And then there was some other stuff, of course, looking at the date. Then I was looking for photographs, which I know we're going to talk about in a moment.
Okay. With respect to her phone, going to show you State's Exhibit 7.
Okay.
Do you recognize State's Exhibit?
Yes, I do.
7? What is State's Exhibit 7?
That is a photograph that I recovered from Deputy Carson Plank's personal, I didn't say personal, sheriff's office phone
Okay.
that depicts what I believe is a drop of,
We'll get into
I'm sorry.
another witness, but you recovered that photo off her sheriff's office phone.
it was on a sheriff's office phone.
Do you know when that photo was created?
It was the morning of January 12th at 5:52 p.m. And I know it was created by the phone, not just because the way the photo is named, because they have certain naming conventions, but there's actually metadata embedded within the photograph that actually indicated it was taken by an iPhone 6s Plus, which I know that the defendant does not have an iPhone 6s Plus.
Five, the time.
5:52 a.m.
And actually, I'm sorry, I'm going to label that State's Exhibit 7A.
So what he's just identified is 70A, 70A.
Right.
Thank you.
Your Honor, this time to say remove that State's Exhibit 7A.
No objection.
Thank you. 70A is admitted.
We'll introduce that through another witness and discuss it.
Yes.
But with respect to Deputy Plank, well, did you examine her personal phone?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And did you also obtain cell phone records for Deputy Plank?
Yes, I did. I obtained them from AT&T via search warrant I served to them.
What did you find with respect to the contact list of Deputy Plank's personal phone?
In her personal phone, Frank Bybee's personal phone number was listed in there, not his work phone. And he was listed in there by his name and that 2388564 number only.
I'm going to show you State's Exhibit 70B. What is State's Exhibit 70B?
70B is a representation of call detail records from Carson Plank. And these aren't, basically typed in by me. They're literally copied and pasted from the records that AT&T provided me. And these are phone calls with only Frankie Bybee, excluding out what other superfluous calls she made, on January 11th through 12th of 2017.
Trying to say remove that State's Exhibit 70B.
No objection.
Thank you. 70B is admitted, may be published.
Just brief for you, again, we kind of discussed it. So these are calls from Deputy Plank's personal phone?
Yes.
Okay, and can you tell the members of the jury the calls that are on?
The very first one is January 11th, 2017 at 8:44 p.m. 48 seconds. It rang for 4 seconds, and then the actual estimated time in ET was 14 minutes, 28 seconds. It originated from that, and what this MT means is they received. So it's out, in, so we can correlate what those are. And then her cell towers didn't matter. They actually ended up, like this one is actually right by her house.
Okay, the first one though, it was an e-call from the defendant.
From the defendant's known phone number of 2388564 at 20:44 p.m.
And there were 2 other calls the following day.
Yes, at 6:16 a.m. there was a call that was made out. It rang for 32 seconds, and then the call was 2, so it probably went to voicemail, I would assume. And then later on the 12th at 5:57 p.m., There was a phone call made out, it rang for 18, and it was connected for 6 minutes and 58 seconds. And I don't know where that tower is. I know that is at right by your house.
Okay, Exhibit 70C.
Thank you.
What is Exhibit 70C?
This is a photograph that I recovered from Carson Plank's personal phone.
Okay. Your Honor, at this time, the state would move into evidence. State Exhibit 70C.
No objection.
No objection. 70C is admitted. May be published if you wish.
Can you tell members of the jury the investigative significance of State's Exhibit 70C?
70C is, again, it's a photograph that was taken by her phone and recovered from her phone, meaning Carson Plank's phone. Her personal phone. What this represents is, this is the actual wing system that I explained, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. This is where it pulls that data in and puts it on a screen that you can use. You, meaning whomever the deputy, and that, if you were to click on that, it's hyperlinked there. That would lead you to other stuff about the case, those hyperlinks. So this is, again, a photo of the dispatch screen from January 11th at 4:32 p.m.
Okay. So, what's the information within that wing system? Does it track all the information that was previously entered?
Yes, it does, and I know that all this data in the caps, that was put in there by the dispatcher, and then the lower cap stuff is actually typed in there by the responding deputy. There's certain calls you don't have to do a report for, an actual official report. You can add your comments and clear it out. Basically, we call it no report.
Okay.
Like a welfare check, if the person's fine, they're like, I'm good, leave me alone, I'm watching TV. You clear it out with no comments.
Let's go through, so
Sure.
the lower cap information beginning with upon arrival.
Yes, and what I will tell you is I know that this was called in by Deputy Tritchler from the front desk. I spoke to her about this later.
Without going to hearsay,
Going
but
to hearsay.
that was not provided information by
Whoever called us in. Complaint on phone with suicidal subject Marcia Soul, advising also being harassed by LEO, law enforcement officer. Subject, it's blotted out. And there's, well, her, I guess it says subject phone. 79-year-old female, complaint on phone with subject. Complaint advised that unit was on the way to talk to her. Subject has threatened to sit in car in garage with car running, and a reference another case number from 2016.
That was the other case which we had discussed earlier. Right?
This is actually the time that Deputy Collison came to Marcia Soul's home on December 29th.
So
That's that case number.
The December 29th response.
Yes.
Okay, so the lowercase information is the arrival on the 11th of January.
Yes.
Okay.
And that was typed in there by Deputy J.P. Harris, ID 2026.
Okay, can you put the information that Deputy Harris put in the wing system?
What he put in when he cleared it out is, upon arrival, he made contact with Marcia Soul. She advised she was upset with Deputy Bybee because she believes he got her committed and fraudulently used her banking info. She denied making any statements about harming herself several times. She did not meet the criteria for Baker Act coverage. She did appear to be mentally ill. She advised she receives in-home care daily from a caregiver. No further action taken at the time of this report. And then he actually changed, he meaning Deputy Harris. This could have been coded out. I don't have the data. But he actually, Deputy Harris, changed this to a welfare check, which doesn't require an actual report.
Okay. So you indicated that you found this on Deputy Plank's personal phone.
Yes, and it was taken January 11th at 8:55 p.m.
And in that, the time that it was actually created,
Yes,
it's a photo of the wing system.
it's a photo of a computer displaying wings.
And in that wing system, Ms. Soul is complaining about Deputy Bybee because she believes he got her committed and is summary.
Same.
There's information that Deputy Harris put in from Ms. Soul in that, correct?
The lowercase writing would have been entered by the responding Deputy Harris, yes.
What does Deputy Carson Plank do with that screenshot?
At this juncture, in the investigation on her phone, I had no indication that anything was done with this photo other than its creation at this juncture.
Okay.
It wasn't, I didn't see that it was sent anywhere. It was just, there's a picture of it.
Did you find it anywhere else?
I did find it later in Frank Bybee's on his personal phone. When I recovered his iTunes backup, I could see that it was actually sent to him by Carson.
Okay, and when was that screenshot sent to the defendant?
Right about exactly 8:55 p.m.
On the 11th.
on the 11th. So that would actually be during the phone call that they were having.
Okay, so during the phone call that the defendant is on with Deputy Plank on her personal phone.
From 8:44 p.m. and it's a 14-minute and 29-second phone call. So that brings you through roughly 59 hours, or whatever it is, at the 9 o'clock-ish. So in between there, this is taken at 8:55. So yes, during that phone call, this picture's taken and sent to his phone.
Created and transmitted to the defendant.
Yes, within the iChats.
Were there any other screenshots or messages sent to the defendant from Carson Plank?
Yes, there were 3 more total pictures or images that were sent. They were taken on Carson Plank's phone and they were sent to Frankie Bybee's personal phone. One was a picture, an actual using the regular camera app, and 2 of them were pictures of her sheriff's office phone taken within the actual iChat app. And the reason why I said is it actually makes the pictures a little different. It files them with a different name. You can actually tell how a picture is created by the name of the picture. But to be specific, that's what it is. So there's 3 of them. It's a dispatch screen and then iChats between Carson Plank and Deputy Chris Butler.
you states exhibit 70B 1, 2, and 3.
Okay.
Has to be rectified.
Yes, the very first one, 70D David 1. It's actually a picture of not our wing system, but the actual computer aided the CAD and the in-car computer. The deputies received their calls. This is the actual screen for a call involving Marcia Soul. It actually shows her house, the time, the grid, the zone as we call it. This is the actual dispatch computer. And then the next two, which we'll talk about when we get to them, these are actually, it's pictures of her sheriff's office phone, and they're taken within the iChat app, and they're conversations between her and Christopher Butler.
Okay. In reference to the call that they're on, in reference to
They're about the call. Deputy Chris Butler was Carson Plank's relief at the scene.
Okay. Brian, it's time to say we're moving down to states exhibit 70D 1, 2, and 4.
No objection.
No objection having been heard. 71D 1, 2, and 3 are admitted.
Okay. Now, again, what's states exhibit 70D 1?
This is, again, it's a picture of the computer-aided dispatch system for the call, and it gives the pertinent information, 80-year-old female, conscious and alert. The deputy said they're okay, 10-7 or 10-6 means I'm fine, leave me alone. And this is the information here that was actually in the screen, and it shows her address. The Elmo is kind of like blinding it out, but it actually, when you look at the picture, it's very clear as her address, the zone, and the grid that the sheriff's office uses to geolocate. And it says that...
what was the entry where it says 28, 34?
What this is the actual call taker 01, call taker 03, they could do various things. They're all logged in there in the system. What it says is, complaining callback advised, someone tried to murder her last night.
Okay. I'm going to show you states exhibit 70E2.
Well, let's back up on that one. That one was created, and it was not on her phone as being texted, but on Frank Bybee's phone, it was actually received on his end. But that was actually taken with their camera app the morning of the 12th at 6:37 in the morning. And it was actually, her GPS location data was enabled. It was actually taken from her driveway.
Okay, but it was sent to the defendant.
Correct.
At what time?
I'd have to look at the exact chats, which we're going to get to, but the photo was created at 6:37 in the morning. Within a short duration of time of that morning, it was sent to the defendant's phone.
Okay. And we're going to go into states exhibit 70E2 and 3.
Okay?
Brian, after these two exhibits, I was going to see if you want to take it.
That'd be perfect.
These are pictures of the iChats between Carson Plank and Deputy Christopher Butler. And I know they occurred because we seized his phone, as in Chris Butler's phone. We seized her sheriff's office phone. I know that they're there. I know that these conversations took place, but there's actually pictures of them that were taken with the iChat and then transmitted to Frank Bybee's personal phone.
Okay. And 70E3.
Yes. And that's the second of the two, and it ends in the morning. Unfortunately, these don't track the actual dates and times, but I know based on investigation that this was shortly after the incident occurred. This is occurring now on the 12th, where the blue is her and that color is him, meaning Chris Butler.
Right. I'm not sure. Of course, now time for recess.
I'll kind of leave it up to the jury. You want to break now? You want to break in front? I'm getting a positive, and when I went to you, or would we rather, and I got a no. So let's take our break now. I want to go 15 minutes and reconvene at 5 minutes past 3. Thank you, folks.
All rise for integrity.
Please be seated, everyone. Jackson, you may continue your inquiry, sir.
Detective Klay, were you able to extract text messages between Deputy Carson Plank and the defendant in this case?
Yes.
If I want to show you what's remarkable, it says Exhibit 71.
Okay.
And ask if you recognize that.
Yes, I do.
What does it say, Exhibit 71?
This is an iChat extracted from Frankie Bybee's personal phones, backup from his laptop, between himself and Deputy Carson Plank on her personal phone. It's 139 total messages from January 9th of 2017, and the terminus is January 12th at 7:51 p.m. So in 2 days, 131 messages back and forth. 139, excuse me.
Right. At this time, say we look at that, it states Exhibit 71.
No objection.
State 71 is admitted. No objection hasn't been heard, and you may publish.
Just briefly, Detective. These are all the iChats.
Yes.
Okay. On the iChats, are you able to determine whether or not the photographs that we had previously discussed were transmitted to the defendant?
Yes, they were.
Okay. And how do you know that?
They're actually populated by the forensic tool within this chat thread to show. On the bottom, ladies and gentlemen, jury directed that. That's the screenshot of the welfare check picture that was taken on January 11th at 8:55 p.m. And it was actually transmitted at 8:55 and 47 seconds p.m. that evening.
Now, during the communications between Deputy Plank and Deputy
Deputy Bybee?
Defendant, did they discuss the call in which Deputy Plank was called out?
Yes.
Okay, and right before that, and it's actually the second green box, but the first one you can see. Right above that, what did Deputy Plank say they did with respect to the initial investigation?
Well, let me go up one above that, which went with what she said earlier in the day when she called in the 32 threat, the suicide threat, 32T. No, we squashed it. Is that what you wanted me to direct to? And that was the morning of January 12th at 7:11 a.m.
Okay, so she indicates they squashed it?
That's my understanding in reading these.
Okay, then later on, there is a discussion about Deputy Plank being interviewed.
Okay.
Was there conversations between the defendant and Deputy Plank about what she discussed with the detectives?
Yes.
Okay. And where was that in the?
That starts off more on the bottom, I believe, here. The person using Frank Bybee's phone asks, okay, how was the interview at 7:45 in the morning? Who was it?
And what date is that?
That's January 12th. That's
And
the morning after the offense.
okay, and then there was a response from Deputy Plank.
Yes, it was intense. We can talk about it later. I'm still up here. It was cast and shirtless. And then it's these mostly wanted to know about the call, not about you specifically, also around the same time.
Then I'm going to ask. Does the defendant ask what's on her work phone and what was transmitted?
Yes, after they talk a little about it, say, I'll give it to you later, bud. They took my work phone, which I did. Okay, nothing was on the work phone, right? No, I don't think we ever really talked on there. And this is her responding, no phone calls I checked. And the person using Frank Bybee's phone responds, K, no pics of computer calls. I took a picture of her table last night where it looked like there was dry blood and hair, but other than that, nothing they care about. Nope, all on personal. And it fishes out a response from Frank Bybee's phone, K, thank you, Carson. And she responds, of course.
And the other pictures that we discussed and introduced were also noted in the chat records as well.
Yes, they're again on his phone's records. They were the transmission of such did not appear in her phone.
Okay. So was it deleted from her phone?
It was definitely deleted because it's surely on his phone records.
Change topics, we're almost done.
Sure.
Detective. Detective, what's an OpenEye DVR?
An OpenEye DVR is a home security video recording system, specifically the type that was seized from the defendant's home on January 15th via search warrant.
Okay, so there was one seized from the defendant's home by a search warrant?
Yes, it's a 16-channel DVR that had two 1 terabyte hard drives inside. It was a pretty good sized DVR.
Did you do a forensic analysis of the OpenEye DVR that was taken from the defendant's residence?
Yes, I did.
Okay, how did you go about doing that?
Unlike with a computer where we make a forensic copy, because the way DVRs work, they're proprietary systems, they're Linux, and without getting into that whole nerdism, you have to use it inside the actual box. So what we do is we take the hard drives out, we make a clone of them bit for bit. We have forensic tools, forensic actual devices to make the clone copies. So we took two fresh 1 terabyte blank hard drives, we copied over his system, the defendant's home DVR, to these two 1 terabyte systems. We kept the original ones as evidence so they would never get touched again or altered. We put the two clones in the DVR, hook it up to monitor, keyboard, and mouse, and we're going. And that's exactly how it works. That's the only way to do with a DVR, the proprietary.
Okay. Did you find logs on the computer prior to the 14th of January of 2017?
No, based on my examination, and I actually let this thing run for a while and examined it, read the manual. It keeps logs of use, and the only logs that were on it were from January 14th, and then my use.
Okay. So what's the significance of those logs?
The lack of logs is that we couldn't, me as an examiner, no one could actually go back and see what was done with this device, if someone did anything with it or whatnot. It doesn't say, hey, I recorded, because it does record and you see the video, but if for someone were to go do anything to it system-wise, it would have been recorded in the logs.
Okay. So what was your finding with respect to the logs then?
There were no logs prior to the 14th. So it was seized on the 15th. We actually made the clone copy on the 17th. We plugged it in. I had it running for weeks in my office, looking at it, playing with it, trying to copy video off. And all of my interactivity, my interactions with it were all recorded. But again, there were no logs for during the time that it was in the defendant's possession. Of course, it was
What's the
taken.
significance of that to the jury?
Somehow, any traces of user interaction were no longer on the device.
It was deleted?
I would assume it was deleted based on my...
Based upon your training and experience, do you have an opinion as what occurred to these activity logs?
They wouldn't delete themselves. I will tell you, is in all my interactions with it, it wasn't just leaving it on. It was unplugging. It was turning it off. It was literally unplugging it, making it shut down, trying to corrupt it to see what it would do. And that didn't wipe the logs. The only way that I found of removing the logs from this device was to actually go in the setup menu and erase them. I couldn't repeat this my own of making this thing occur.
You actually have to manually delete the logs.
You would have to go into the user setup menu and delete the logs.
Now, the logs don't determine whether the security cameras were operating, do they?
Again, no. It would only system use, system changes.
Did you review the security cameras to see if they were operating from a date range of April 16th to January 14th of 2017?
Yes.
What was your finding?
It was a 16-channel capable system, meaning you could have 16 cameras. There were only 4 cameras that were ever hooked up to it, and it actually, when I say it, when you would use it, besides looking at the video, for each day it will give you a graphical representation. You'll have a long bar of each camera when it's recording. They appeared in my training experience and the examination to be motion recording. There was always one of those cameras almost always recording. There were 2 on the outside and the front, and then there was one in the back of an eye and one in the backyard. So if someone's letting the dog out, or they pull up, or a car drives by, the camera's recording, and The earliest inception of recording was April of 16, so there's recording all the way through the 14th
Of January.
of January, but there was a significant gap in a certain date and time and period that obviously caught my eye because there were no other instances of this kind of a gap. There might be 20, 30 minutes an hour, one of the cameras not recording, but there might have been one of the other of the 4 cameras recording, but never a gap.
When you say gap, all the cameras were.
There was nothing recorded for quite a long period of time.
Okay. Can you tell the members of the jury the gap that you found in the defendant's security camera system in use at his residence, when that was?
Flipping through the exact part of my report which says that, I know that it's about 15:11 or 3:11 p.m. on the 11th, and it doesn't pick up again until the morning of the 12th at 8-ish.
Okay.
And again, I'm trying to find that in my report. I apologize that I don't have that highlighted here. OpenEye DVR. There was video up until January 11th at 3:51, and then there was a gap in the video till 8:01 a.m. on the 12th.
Okay. So when you say there was a gap, every single camera was not operating.
Correct. There was no recording of any kind during that roughly 15 hours.
And was that the only date that you found such an occurrence?
Yes.
In almost, 9 months of review of the camera?
Yes, from April to January 14th. It was the only time there was not some sort of recording going on.
So, does that mean the system was off?
It could mean a multitude of things. I can just tell you that there was no video recorded that time.
Okay. And you couldn't determine it because where were the logs?
There were no logs. Not for anything prior to the 14th. There were no logs for the 11th or the 12th.
Okay.
And I will interject that based on my examination of the device, it would record power on and power offs.
It would?
It did while I was examining it, yes. If I powered it off properly without pulling the plug out, like a normal computer would, it would register in the logs that it had shut down.
So this 14-hour gap was the only gap since the inception of the data on the device was between January 11th at 15:51 hours or 3:51
Correct.
to the 12th of January at 8:01 in the morning.
Yes, sir.
And none of the cameras had any video.
None.
So would these cameras record the coming and going of the occupants of the residence if they were working?
Yes, they would. There was one facing out towards the street that would record the comings and goings of vehicles, and again, there was one out in the back, like on exact angles, but if they let their dog out, I could see them let their dog out in the backyard.
So there's no video evidence of someone coming or going in the residence during this gap period of time?
There's no video at all.
Would the cameras still record if there was no internet service?
Yes, this device operates completely independent of internet service. They're not Wi-Fi cameras. Even if they were, they would directly connect with it. This is made that there are actually 16 ports in the back of it. You run a line and plug it into the back of the DVR. It has nothing to do with what this is internet capable in that if I want to watch my DVR from home somewhere else, I could log into it with my phone or my computer and watch my video, but that would have no bearing on whether it's recording or not.
So the fact that of no internet service doesn't affect the recording of the logs?
No, it does not.
Or the
Recording by the device, no.
By the device.
And in reading the manual itself, and reviewing that before I look at anything, whether it's a phone or computer, or specifically this, I reviewed the operator's manual.
Would the lack of power purge the logs for the system?
I could not duplicate that. As far as I know from reading about it in the operator's manual and messing with it, that did not occur. I could not duplicate those logs being removed by any incidental, accidental means.
Okay, we're going to introduce the DVR through another witness.
Okay.
Okay. So the lack of internet only affects your ability to view it remotely.
Correct.
Okay. You also indicated earlier in the previous testimony that there was a deleted internet browser search related to the OpenEye DVR.
That was on the 14th on the defendant's phone.
And what was that internet browser search in which the defendant?
Will my OpenEye DVR record without power?
And what is the answer to that?
Well, without power, it's not going to power. It's not going to record, of course.
Okay, but there's an actual internet browser search that was deleted from the defendant's iPhone about the OpenEye DVR on the 14th of January.
Correct, and it would be a reasonable thing to check because it could have its own internal battery. It does have a little CMOS battery, which is your date and time battery, but it doesn't have any other battery backup. It does not function without being hooked to 110 AC.
Okay, but internet service does not impact it at all.
No bearing at all.
Okay. We're almost done, Detective.
Okay.
I'm going to introduce the last exhibit for you, 72. What's the number? 72. Detective, I'm going to show you State Exhibit 72.
Okay.
Ask if you recognize State Exhibit 72.
Yes, I do.
What is State Exhibit 72?
This is from Celebrate Physical Analyzer. This is some data from Troy King's phone that was voluntarily given to us as personal iPhone 6S Plus.
Okay.
Or 7, excuse me. I keep saying that he had the nice brand new 7. Give it back to you and we can publish
This time,
it.
the state would introduce State's Exhibit 72.
Objection.
No objection having been heard, State 72 is admitted, may be published.
Okay. Can you tell the jury what State Exhibit 72 is?
This is from the databases on Troy King's phone. These are references to text messaging, and from what I understand, these text messages were deleted, and I can tell you this is all there is. I don't have any of the other actual data, the message, the status. As you can see, this is what it is directly from the database. It's showing that he was trying to text Bybee, or there was a 3 text with Bybee at least.
Can you determine?
I can't determine who sent what.
Okay.
But I can determine that the times here were correct. The phone was operating correctly. It had the correct internal time, and there's other information. This correlates with Frankie Bybee's phone that showed that at 1:28 p.m. there was some sort of incoming SMS text message at 1:28 a.m. from Troy King
Bybee device, but you
on the
have
Bybee backup.
But you
Yes.
have no content.
No content. I would assume that they both deleted off their sides of phones.
Okay.
Again, assuming because I have no data to suggest otherwise.
I'm going to object.
To the assuming?
Yes, sir.
Sustained.
Detective, in your opinion, based upon your forensic analysis of the phone, can you determine whether or not it appeared to be deleted?
I believe that something was sent and it was deleted.
And there's 3 entries. What are the 3 entries? Or those 3 separate texts?
That is correct. They are 3 separate entries. It could be maybe that the user could resend the same text message over again, but there are 3 separate distinct transmissions of information from Troy King's phone to Frank Bybee's phone.
And Frank Bybee's phone to Troy King's phone.
Or receiving, again, I can't assume facts, not in evidence, because it doesn't show.
Again, you can't determine directionality of the messages.
No. And we've discussed this before. Cell phone companies do not track your text messages. Their data and they're encrypted. They track your phone calls, but not your text messages. Sorry.
Thank you. I'm sure Madam Clerk has all the exhibits. And gentlemen, we may cross-examine.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
I guess the best place to start is kind of where you ended, if that's okay.
Of course.
The text message that you're referencing on Troy King and Mr. Bybee, 1:28 a.m.
Yes.
Right? Did you originally tell us that that was a text message from Mr. Bybee to Mr. King?
On Mr. Bybee's phone, I believe it shows it was an incoming from Troy King. I'd have to look at it again. I believe it was an incoming from Troy King to him. On Troy's phone, you can't tell what it is. On Frank's phone, I do believe it was incoming.
Okay. So, at least from your analysis of those two phones, it appears to you, in your opinion, that Troy King was attempting to text Frank Bybee at 1:28 a.m.
Yes.
And you don't have any indication that they actually communicated.
No, I do not.
I guess what I'm trying to understand, and maybe you can help me, Detective Klay, it appears that there are times in your analysis where you, if someone deletes something, you're able to go back and find it. Is that fair?
It's fair. It just depends on how much the phone's used.
And the reason I ask that is, for example, you had determined that there were some text messages from Carson Plank to Mr. Bybee that were deleted, but you were still able to recover them.
Yes, from Mr. Bybee's phone, but not from hers. They've been deleted from her phone. They no longer existed on hers.
Okay. And certainly, with that deletion of those text messages in Carson Plank's phone, you don't have any indication through any of your very fine and detailed analysis that Frank Bybee had anything to do with those deletions, correct?
Of what, the Troy King ones?
No, Carson Plank.
On her end?
Right.
No, he couldn't have deleted from her phone. They were still on his backup. They weren't deleted.
That's what I guess what I'm getting to. He's an iPhone user. It seems like everybody else in this analysis is an iPhone user. Fair?
I didn't have a single non-iPhone device. I think I had 21 or 22 iPhones.
Okay. So there is no ability through all of your analysis, all your technology, that would allow Frank Bybee to go into someone else's iPhone and delete part of their text message.
Correct. You cannot do that.
So when you told us about Marcia Soul's text messages being deleted and raised the date of December 10th, 2016, he couldn't have gone into her phone and deleted those text messages.
Well, what do you mean by that specifically gone into her phone? Physically or electronically?
Either way.
Well, he could have physically. I mean, that's in the realm of possibility. And the cell tower record showed that on the 10th at 11:02 a.m., he was hitting on the tower by her house. Within 24 minutes, he could have physically been there. Versus...
You don't know that.
No, of course not.
There's no facts that you would present to these people that that's what he did.
Correct.
That's just speculation.
That is correct.
So let's go with your analysis of what you're saying to us. It would have required him to actually go to her home on December 10th, correct?
Yes.
Grab her phone, correct?
Yes.
And delete those text messages literally within minutes after she sent them.
After they were sent.
After they were sent, right?
Do I need to wait on the objection? I'm sorry.
I didn't hear an objection, so.
I did object, but I think counsel rephrased the question. I objected when she sent them, so to the form of the question.
So it's been corrected. There is no
Correct.
objection, so you can answer the question too.
I believe what it's trying to get at is that it's possible the defendant could have physically been there and done it. Could have been possible she deleted them, but it looks like he was near her home when all that occurred. His phone was near her home receiving phone calls around the time this whole thing happened.
How much, as part of your investigation, were you told about Marcia Soul as an individual and how she conducted herself? if any?
I don't want to know, and we're not told as digital forensic investigators. It's my job to look at the data, not to analyze the people.
That's fair. But clearly, you saw text messages from Marcia Soul to Mr. Bybee on December 10th, 2016. And I believe you said there were approximately 14 messages within 10 minutes. Is that fair?
I believe that's
just the form of the question.
Sustained. Just rephrase.
Were there 14 messages within 10 minutes on December 10th, 2016?
I believe.
From Marcia Soul to Frank Bybee?
From her phone to his phone.
Yes.
And again, I can't even say he's behind that phone. I'm saying it's their devices, just to be fair.
Right.
From 10:32 a.m. to 10:42 a.m., 10 minutes, that's 14 messages. Correct. They're not on her phone.
Okay. Can you tell us when they were deleted?
No, I cannot. But again, in my previous testimony is the way the databases work. By the next day, on the morning of the 11th, the phone was being used again. There's text message in the conversation. So again, making that not leap, but my professional opinion based on the data is somewhere between when they were sent between the devices and the 11th, they would have been deleted. Just how the databases work.
Okay. Now, since you brought up the cell tower issues, let's talk for a moment about those. Cell towers, the way they work, basically throw out a cone, and I think you saw it in a couple of your exhibits. Is that correct?
To a degree, you can generalize it that it's a cone. Yes, we call it not the cone of uncertainty, but there are certain regions of the tower that are covered by a cone. Yes.
What is the radius of that cone? How many miles?
And that's the thing where it gets into why we can't geolocate a person is because with these data sets we have, now the range tower locations we didn't discuss, that had some of that data. With the regular call detail records that we have, they don't actually say this beam is actually only 40 degrees and it's literally at compass 240 because they can be different. They don't all generally have, and that's why I stated earlier during my testimony, it's a general representation of the face of it. Because if you've got that one out there at Lakewood Ranch and it's facing at Lakewood Ranch, there's a heck of a lot of people over there. That beam might not be 140 degrees, it might only be 60 degrees. And they might beef that signal up and it may really only be strong towards Lakewood Ranch. And then the other one might have 200 degrees.
So on December 10th, 2016, you referenced that towers were showing Mr. Bybee was how far from Ms. Soul's house?
On the 10th, I didn't represent even the faces of the cones. I simply just showed that he was using that tower for his call.
So tell these folks what was the potential radius in miles that he could have been in?
I can't guess to that without the actual data from Verizon.
Didn't you get that?
They don't supply that, and actually that data is very short-lived. Now we have some of that data from the 11th and 12th, those range to tower location data sets. It's actually hundreds and hundreds of pieces of information. They only have that information, they being Verizon Wireless, for 7 days. With Carson Planks, for instance, and I'll bring that up because it's part of this investigation, they keep 18 months worth of data of where you're at every 20 seconds. Verizon Wireless, not so much. So when the investigation was put to me, I was told to get these cell phone records and look at them. That was done on April 20th. Well, if Verizon only keeps them for 7 days, I could have never gotten one from December 10th.
So from December 10th, when you gave us testimony regarding where Mr. Bybee was via a cell tower, how did you get it?
From the call detail records, it showed that when his device made those calls, is that those are the towers he was using, and not assuming, but knowing that there's a certain number of towers within certain distances, it obviously would be that you would be near that tower.
But you're unable to tell these folks where that radius of that tower was on that call on that day.
No, again, Verizon just does not keep that information.
All right. If we can look at 59C. Sorry, Your Honor.
That's quite all right, sir.
There's a lot of documents.
Yes, she does.
So through. I'll use my copy and apologize. Showing you what's been admitted as 59C for identification. So, the AOL access IP summary, we were able to determine that there were 12,910 IP addresses that logged into msol@aol.com from that time period.
Yes.
Okay. And then the next line, 10,263 IP addresses, which actually meant was 10,263 times, right?
Correct. But they're each an individual one. Yeah, there's not 10,000 separate one. You are correct on that, yeah.
I mean, you'd still be looking if you were counting 10,000, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I had a little help with Microsoft Excel too, so.
Fair enough. Now, when you go down to the next line, IP address, the one for the Verizon business for the Sarasota County government, you told us that that's a static address, one that never changes. Is that fair?
Correct.
And then you go down to the next section, and starting with 47, that would have been, again, accessing the internet service for Frontier, which was at Mr. Bybee's house, correct?
Yes.
And that would have been accessed 5,217.
Correct.
Now, if I access from a computer an IP address, let's say at Mr. Bybee's house, and I access and I leave it out, it keeps registering every few seconds, doesn't it?
For within the AOL mail?
Yes.
Not as far as I know. I called them and spoke to them to confirm the information they sent me, because when they sent me all that data, it had the stuff AS for account sign on and whatever they were.
Right.
And I was told by their legal department that that meant that each time it was interacted with, it's not going to keep repeating itself. Like you leave it on, the record's just playing and playing and playing, so to speak.
Right.
I was told by them that that was the case.
All right. I'm going to show you a page here from State's Exhibit 59G as in boy.
Okay.
See if we can have a discussion about that. All right.
Okay.
Now,
Ooh, nice and big.
all right. So here we are. Say December 9th, 2016, correct?
Correct.
And these are all coming from the IP address 47.197.67.65, correct?
Yes.
Which you determined had been from the Frontier IP address in Mr. Bybee's house, correct?
Correct. All the way up until January 4th.
Okay. So as we go down these, you can see that literally, it's recording every second.
Sometimes twice a second.
Right?
Yeah.
So do you count each one of those individually?
That's what I did. I count them individually.
Okay. So you were counting doubles.
I don't know about doubles. You could be, someone could be going through the email and flipping through the email and scrolling through them.
By second.
I do it that way sometimes too. In these investigations, I'm going through
All right.
50,000 pictures or 6,000 emails. I'm going to skip through them like that. I'm just saying that's how it was represented to me by them.
Okay. If we look down here, you can see, for example, in this area here, 2213.14.0, 2213.14.0, you counted those as 2, didn't you?
That's what they reported.
And then you further go down, and 221806, 221806, again, you counted those as 2.
Yes.
So when you represent that there's 5,217 times, many of those times are duplicates.
They could be. It just depends on how they're reporting it from AOL.
And the only way we know they're duplicates is we got to go through this 411-page document.
Not really, and the problem why I can't tell if they're duplicates or not is because AOL tracks that you're accessing it, but not the individual emails. The only way I'd know if they're duplicates is actually looking at the email. They don't retain it.
At least from this document, this is part of the 411 pages, it appears that there are clearly duplicates. Would you agree?
You could say they're duplicates. I'm not so sure about that.
Well, if I ask you to look at December 9th, 2016, and 2213.14, where there's 2, how would you tell me whether they're duplicates or not?
I can only go by what they tell me. And AOL told me that it was individual accesses. I can't just infer something in there. I'm just going by what they tell me.
How do you individually access at the same time?
Within seconds, I can mash on that button and you can go through them. It depends on what the user's looking for. I don't know the mind of the person doing it. I don't know if they're looking for financial information. I don't know if they're looking for a shopping list. I don't know what the mind of the person was doing this. I do know that it was from Frank Bybee's home.
Well, you would agree with me that at least on 2213.14, it appears that there were 2 searches simultaneously at the same time, same seconds.
Yes.
And that can be done by one individual off of one.
I thumb through them like that all the time. Seriously.
Okay. So when you're going through this 411 pages, come up with the 5,000 times. The only way you would know whether they're duplicates would be to actually look at the actual email.
Correct.
This 411-page document wouldn't be able to tell you.
Absolutely not.
As we go through, you see at the bottom your analysis was numerous Verizon wireless IP addresses associated with Frank Bybee.
Yes.
Access Marshall Soul's AOL account 4,008 times.
Yes.
All right, now what numerous Verizon wireless IP addresses are you referencing?
I subpoenaed them. I actually went through this line by line and I actually killed a legal pad going through it on, say, just demonstrative purposes. On December 29th at whatever time, I would see a 174.228. I know that that's Verizon Wireless. I went to the American Registry for Internet Numbers because the U.S. government issues all internet numbers for the world, and it came up to Verizon. I went through Verizon and I subpoenaed them. One of my subpoenas alone to Verizon Wireless was 28 IPs. I believe I'd have to count that. One subpoena alone, I asked them for 28 IPs, and they gave me back. They were associated with the defendant's phone.
Okay.
Natting routers, that's a whole other long conversation.
Well, let's talk about that.
Sure.
A natting ID, N-A-T-T-I-N-G,
You know what you're talking about.
is not an IP address, is it?
It is, it's a shared IP address.
Exactly. So if you throw out, for example, the 174.228.6.225, that is in fact a natting IP address, isn't it?
Yes.
That is not specific to Frank Bybee.
It is in a way, and I'm sure you'll give me an opportunity to explain why it is.
Sure.
Okay, the way natting router works is Like if you're at your office and you could have 99 people on there, everybody's got their own individual IP, but you have the main, your street address. Sheriff's Office 2071 Ringling, we have an IP, it finds that house, it finds you individually. The cell phone's natting routers almost work in that same capacity, in that you find the house, you find the building. So in these specific instances with this case, if I asked them for 174.228.136.108, I asked them for that on January 4th, 2017 at 12:29 and 13 seconds. They supplied to me however many persons were using that natting router, and within that, Frank Bybee's cell phone was one of those numerous cell phones were using that natting router. Now, can they actually tell me the specific MAC address? No, because I don't even have that anyway. I can just say, from the AOL data, I know a Verizon Wireless was there, and Verizon Wireless, I remember it so well. They sent me a 10-page document, I printed it out, third or fourth page, I see that exactly that time and second, 941.238.8564 is using that Verizon Wireless natting router.
But that Verizon natting router could have been one of many.
Well, there's a whole bunch of people, but specifically Frank Bybee's phone number happened to be using at that time with that IP. Now they own giant, large swaths, to generalize it, if you will. They own the whole 174.228, and then there's 2 other octets. So there's a lot of IP addresses that are assigned to them. But when you finally get down to 174.228.136.108, at specifically 12:29 and 13 seconds, his phone shows up on that natting router.
Now, the 174 is specific to Verizon.
In this case, I believe that they were, yes.
Comcast is some other one.
Generally, they're 72, 73, just depends. And as you saw, 47 is almost always going to be Frontier. They bought that from Verizon.
So on States Exhibit 60B is more than admitted into evidence. Take a look at just say the bottom couple here. The 47 on December 19, 2016 at 8:19:11. See where I'm at?
Yep.
And then if we scroll on over, you can see that that is connected to Verizon, or the Frontier.
Frontier Bybee house, yes. 47-197-65, whatever was his house.
All right. And certainly, same situation with 174.228. That would be connected to Mr. Bybee's
Verizon wireless phone, yes.
Right.
Yes, sir.
So, in your analysis of the last 3, January, I apologize, so you used January 1st, 2017, 174.58, that's a Verizon, correct?
Not always, no. And they don't own the whole swath of it always. That's why I have to finitely send them subpoenas like this. And generally,
designated that as Comcast.
yeah, Comcast does have that higher one. That's why I say I can generally recognize them. And when I work in investigation, I'm looking at a bad guy downloading child porn. If I see a 47, I know it's a Frontier, and it's probably here, and I do a subpoena and find out if it is or not. So in this case, it would be the same thing. I would see 174. I'd look it up on Aaron. Aaron tells me who it belongs to. I shoot him a subpoena, and it's confirmed what it is or isn't. It's not always. It's generally. They do own certain data sets.
I believe you testified on a question asked of you by Mr. Jack that Mr. Bybee was via cell tower in the vicinity of Ms. Soul's house on December 13th.
Yes. Yes.
Correct?
Correct.
And I believe your testimony was that had to do with the fact that there were changes to her AOL account during that time period, right? Or am I missing that?
There was activity in her PayPal account around the same time, which we talked about her PayPal account, and we separately talked about that his phone was hitting on the 2049 B Ridge Gettle Nissan Tower around the same time that was occurring. And he also checked out on his dispatch CAD at her house too.
All right. So are you suggesting that he was at her house on the 13th changing these AOL account information?
My opinion, or
Well, I was trying to figure out what you were trying to say to us about
he checked out at her house on his dispatch CAD. Well, at least on her street. Let me be clear, not her exact house.
nobody put him in her house.
No, you're correct.
You don't have any investigative information to put him in the house,
No, I do not.
just on the street.
On the street and using a tower near her home, that's all. You're correct.
So if in fact we look at the 13th, you have your pointer with you?
I sure do.
Okay. So let's start with the first one, December 13, 2016. 73-225-162-235. That was Miss Souls' Comcast.
I'd have to see over on the right just to be sure. Generally, and I'd have to look at the subpoena. Yep, that looks right. And I can look at the compliance, but I believe that's correct. That is her home Comcast. Yes.
Okay. And then, if you look at this correctly,
Got to try it with my eyes.
my apologies, sir.
Thank you.
All right, so we go down on the 13th at 2:21:22.
Right here.
Yes, sir. And then 2:21:51.
Okay.
We look over and we see what happened. We see that there's login failure, correct?
Yes.
And that's coming from Ms. Souls' Comcast.
Yes, sir.
And then, as we go down on the 13th, we start seeing web login, authorization flow presented, web login, and those are all also on the 13th, correct?
Yes.
Now let me ask you this. If you look at these, there's zeros.
These?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
What's that?
That's as I testified earlier this morning, and it's been a long time. Those are non-IP captures of, we call it sub-activity. They capture activity, and then this is internal stuff.
Internal by who?
By PayPal.
So is there actual activity going on?
They are documenting whatever activity they chose to present me when I asked them for activity in the account.
Okay.
And just to throw everybody out there, this is also in Pacific Standard Time. So if you do try and match it up with local calls, you have to do the math.
Yes, sir. Let's talk for a moment, if we can, about State's Exhibit 16A. This is the email from Philomena Pereira. Recall that December 22nd?
The email to Philomena, yes, sir, I do.
And your analysis was that at the very bottom there were two things. One, sent from my iPhone, and then a quote from Anne Frank. Is that correct?
Yes, and her name and address, but yes.
And this was the only email that you found within Marcia Souls' trash that had both of those?
Within the entire data set, all the emails, all 5,958. And I didn't thumb through those that fast like we were talking about before. I did actually have to. When I saw that, I had that moment and I had to go through every single email.
So this email was actually in Marcia Souls' email history. Is that fair?
Yes, sir.
And you found it only within her trash.
Yes, sir.
Did you also look through what is referred to as drafts? You know what I mean by that?
Drafts are in another part of the folder system, and they would be encompassed within the 5,958 total emails. The 419's in there too.
Knowing how thorough you were, I'm assuming that you went through also all the drafts.
I will tell you, I don't recall there being any drafts on the system.
Not a single one?
I don't recall there being any. I looked at this 10 ways to Sunday. I looked at the programs. I literally exported the whole V4 file to my local computer. I pulled up with my local computer. I mean, I spent days on these emails.
The trash designation indicates to you that what? The email was written, sent, and then put in trash?
The way it works with AOL is once an email has been read by the receiver of the account, it's in trash. Obviously, this was a sent email, and it's also in trash. This could have been in the sent, but it was in the trash. You can trash your sent as well, but that maybe I'm confusing it a little bit there, because I know that when I'll send an email and I didn't mean to, I want to keep it as new. If I go back to my computer, I can go back to my old email and I can make it new again, because once I read it on my phone, it's deleted. I'm not doing that on a Mac, though. This is a whole different animal with a Mac.
Did you determine whether this was in the sent box?
It was not in the sent, it was only in the trash.
Which tells you what?
That it had been thrown away. It had been marked for deletion.
The other two emails that Mr. Jackman had you identify, 16B is a boy and 16C, one to Marianne Dumbro and one to Dr. Lerner. Did you find those anywhere within Marcia Soul's email?
No.
Not in trash, sent, drafts, no.
No, I did not.
Are you able to recover emails that were deleted?
It just depends on how much the system is used. It's not a really good definitive answer. It's almost like keep saying first in, last out. It was a pretty good sized computer. It could have held a lot of stuff that was recovered, but it's a really long, nerdy conversation. It depends is a good answer.
Did you attempt to recover any deleted emails?
Well, that's what the forensic programs do. If something is marked as available, as in it's unallocated as the computer term, it's able to be used that spot, it would have read it. Like, so if there's a picture and I delete the picture, I don't delete it, I mark it for deletion. It still exists out there on the hard drive, I can delete that. So yes, that did occur. And through that effort to delete anything, and these are a specific file extension, EMLX file, yes, my computer programs did try and recover those, and no, I did not recover them. That would have been done, yes.
All right. Kind of got off track.
I know, I get muddy in there.
That's all right. Kind of got off track to where I started, which let me go back if I can to the OpenEye DVR. You with me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You told us that there are 4 cameras that were activated on this DVR.
Correct. I've only seen 4 tracks.
Has the ability for 16, I think
Yes.
you said, but it only had 4.
Correct.
2 in front, 2 in back.
Yes.
You also told us that those cameras were motion activated.
Yes.
So no motion, no recording.
Correct.
So in the event there's no motion for a given camera, nothing's going to record.
Correct.
So if there's no motion between 3:51 p.m. on the 11th and 8:01 a.m. on the 12th, it wouldn't record.
Correct.
Were you also able to determine whether there was history? And I think you said, is that only through the logs?
That would be only through the logs, correct.
When you were analyzing the text messages for Mr. Bybee, you did do that, correct?
Yes.
All of his text messages?
All that were available in the data set, yes.
Correct. Did you notice that he had sent photographs to Miss Soul?
Yes.
Do you remember what those photographs were?
The ones on the 13th are we talking about?
Whenever you may have seen them.
There were photographs throughout time. There were photographs, to be specific, of her dog. He was babysitting her dog.
Yes, sir.
Cute little dog. I know on the 13th he sent her pictures of her credit card and her keys.
Let's talk about that.
Sure.
December 13th?
I believe it was December 13th.
All right. So December 13th, 2016, Mr. Bybee is sending photographs to Miss Soul of multiple credit cards, keys, car keys, house keys.
You are correct. Yes, he is.
And in looking through his text messages, that corresponded to him saying, I'll go and take photographs for you and send them to you so you're not worried about where your keys are. Fair?
Fair.
Because in reviewing the text messages back and forth, Miss Soul was getting on to Mr. Bybee, and I'm using that phrase.
It's a nice way.
Okay. She was a bit perturbed with Mr. Bybee of, where's my keys, where's my credit cards, how am I going to get in the house?
Yes, correct.
And he says, relax, I'll go take pictures, I'll send it to you.
Without looking at him, I don't recall if he said, I'll go take pictures. I just know that he did send her pictures. And I'm assuming, I hate to say assuming in digital forensics, that they are taken inside her house.
Okay.
Now, I do know that they weren't set until much later in the evening on the 13th.
But you did find them.
Oh, yes.
And they were transmitted from Mr. Bybee to Miss Soul.
They surely were.
All right. Let's talk for a second about item 18. Do you know what I'm referencing?
I've got a good memory for numbers, but I don't remember his evidence numbers.
That's okay. This would be your evidence numbers. Item 18.
Oh, the phone. Evidence item number 18, the iPhone 5S, yes.
Right. Okay. Were you able to determine, and thanks for jumping with me on that, item 18. Were you able to determine, you mentioned to us that there was water.
Yes.
And as a result of water damage, it wouldn't pull out, it wouldn't do anything. Is that fair?
Very fair. Initially, it would not till we replaced some parts.
And what did you have to do?
Put in a new screen and a new battery.
Once you did that, did it pull out?
It sure did.
And were you able to determine through analyzing that phone when it actually stopped being used?
No.
Why?
Because I can't analyze the phone. It's locked via PIN.
Okay. But you eventually got access.
Well, I'm jumping ahead of your question. I got access to the data where it had been backed up to the defendant's laptop.
And when was that?
It was last actually functioning January 16th because it was synced, it was backed up. It had to be working to back up, and you have to have a working screen. You physically cannot do it without a working screen.
And wasn't that the time that you were backing it up, or no?
No, we didn't seize some of his phones. What you say when we made the forensic copy of it?
Right.
Well, if you're talking about his phone, that phone was taken, I believe, on the 23rd of January from his home during a search warrant.
Okay. And you have no ability to tell us when the water damage was?
Obviously not. No, in all honesty, it could have happened a year before, but I know that the phone worked till the 16th.
You mentioned to us and referred to us that Carson Plank's iPhone had deleted some text, and you were able to find those deletions through Mr. Bybee's phone. Fair?
Yes, sir.
The cell towers, your reference was that these are not 100% accurate. The cell tower notifications, correct?
Oh, I'm really hoping you can clarify what you mean by that.
Well, you were being asked about the cell towers and where they were pinging and how they lay out, and your comment was they're not 100% accurate. It doesn't mean he was actually or absolutely at that given address?
It depends on what data set we're looking at. If we're looking at the call detail records of the towers, no. The range to tower records that geolocated the phone within 1,000 meters of variance on January 11th and 12th, I would say those are extremely accurate. Not pinpoint against 1,000 meters, 3,000 feet, half a mile-ish,
Right.
but not as generalized as, say, the December 10th, where I can just say, he was at tower.
There is not one cell tower analysis that you did in this case that ever put Frank Bybee in the driveway of Ms. Soul's home, right?
That is correct, I did not. There no such data exists that I have access to.
Are you aware of an email that Marcia Soul sent December 9, 2016 to Wells Fargo dealing with the beneficiary?
I don't recall. I know that there were emails, but 6,000 emails, I don't have that devoted to memory, honestly.
Do you know, or were you asked by Detective Gata to do some evaluation of the computer of Marcia Soul dealing with that particular email to Wells Fargo for a beneficiary?
I may have given her something. I actually don't recall. I know I looked through it was Wells Fargo, as we talked about. I looked for keys. I really don't honestly remember the context or the date. I would be just making up a thin air if I told you I remembered.
That's fine. There were, and I think you referenced browser history, a couple questions. Do routers save history? Do routers save everything? Do you remember that?
Yeah.
What is the answer? Do routers save everything?
No. They save some stuff. It just depends.
Do routers save history? Browsing history?
To a degree, without giving some investigative techniques I use in child pornography investigations, I have had it where routers have recorded the IP address they obtained child pornography from, but that's not normal. Normally your router, unless there's an issue, it wouldn't record that data.
When you got and were able to extract data from Miss Soul's, is it iMac?
Yes, it's an iMac, all-in-one computer.
You were able to determine that on the 10th of December 2016 that something was sent, but it was missing now, and it may have been on her phone. Is that what you were looking at?
You mean her phone at 10:32 a.m.?
Yes. Yes.
Correct, it was her phone.
All right. And how were you able to determine that something was missing?
Only by the omission of data. It was in the recents log that something had occurred, that there was a communication via iChat text between herself and Frank Bybee, and the conversation key thread was still there, the way it rebuilds those conversations. So it did associate it with that conversation date and time, but again, there was no data.
All right. Just to clarify an area, you're able to go back in and determine through an IP address that, for example, from Mr. Bybee's home on the Frontier account, starting with 47, there was access to Ms. Soul's AOL account, fair?
Yes.
And you were able to come up and designate what the IP address was that did that. Is that fair?
Yes.
You are not able to do that when you're analyzing an iPhone to determine who would have deleted those text messages, are you?
Whole other different kind of technology conversation method. It's just
Completely different, apples and oranges.
yes.
Okay. And certainly, if you were able to determine who was the person who deleted those text messages on December 10th, 2016, you would have told us.
Yes, sir.
fully encrypted is a phrase that you used a number of times in your testimony. Do you recall that?
Yes, specifically about evidence item 78, the defendant's MacBook Pro.
Yes, sir. Apple devices, it is standard that they are fully encrypted. Is that fair?
Yes.
So that's not anything special.
Well,
Is it?
in my opinion, it is a little bit different for the iComputers. It's a whole different animal when it comes to how they encrypt and how we can get into them or not. They've literally made it, there's no way. There's a way the federal government can get into an iPhone. They did that with the San Bernardino shooter. That can be done with a phone, with an actual iPad, or not an iPad, excuse me, an iMac. Ain't happening.
And that's because of the internal workings of the Apple iMac, right? Or the Apple computer, right?
Yes.
Not anything that some individual would do. It's just part of the functionality of the Apple computer.
It depends on the flavor of the iOS on the computer. You go from Sierra to whatever. Yes, it's an innate function.
Did you say in your testimony, Detective Klay, that the cell phone IP changes every hour?
It could. Doesn't always, but it could.
Did it in this case? Is it related to Mr. Bybee's phone?
There were instances throughout time where there were multiple IPs that showed up in Miss Soul's AOL account that were attributed back to Frank Bybee, and there were instances where there were full 24 hours where IPs associated with Frank Bybee's Verizon Wireless stayed the same throughout a 24-hour period. And it's that wonderful forensics answer, it depends.
And did you subpoena every time it changed?
I subpoenaed a whole lot of them, yes. I believe I did. There was only one that I didn't, and when I talked to the company up in Jersey, because it wasn't a normal 174,
yes,
they said, oh yeah, we subbed that out to Verizon Wireless. I'm like, good enough! And then I dealt with Verizon Wireless for it.
All right. Let's talk for a second, if we can, switching gears here to Miss Soul's Google Chrome account.
Okay.
You determined in looking at her computer that she had used Google Chrome approximately 1,089 times.
Yes.
Between
October 14th.
16 to January of 17.
Objection to the form of the question.
Correct?
Yes, 1,080 times from 10/14 of 16 to 1/12 of 17.
No requirement whatsoever to create a Google Chrome account in order to use Google Chrome. Is that fair?
Correct.
So she is freely using it from October of 16 to January of 17 and has not created a Google account, Google Chrome account.
And my normal answer with any device is someone was using it 1,089 times, and then someone created an account on December 9th.
All right. So then, what I was getting to, on December 9th, somebody then creates an actual Google Chrome account.
Yes.
That wasn't necessary.
It'll prompt you. It's one of those annoying web browsers to say, do you want to save that? Do you want to save your password? Do you want to save your personal information? Just saying, personal opinion there.
And because Apple uses as a default the Safari browser, that was the one that you were determined was used the most. Is that fair?
427,000 times.
Followed, I wouldn't want to say a close second, but followed second by the Firefox.
Yes.
Let me add one. Detective, you were aware that originally there was, and I think your phrase was, a phone dump done on Miss Soul's phone on December 22nd?
Yes, sir.
Who brought that phone to be dumped, so to speak?
Sergeant Riley brought it to my office.
Do you know have any information where he got it from?
In speaking to Sergeant Riley, I'd obviously be hearsay.
Well, don't tell me what he said, but independent of what he would have told me, you know.
I don't think I talked to any other person besides him. He told me where it came from.
You're aware that at the time that there was a download of that phone, it had not been placed into evidence.
Correct.
It was one of those things where it was asked for, it was surrendered, hand carried to you guys in digital forensics,
Yes.
and you did the download, and then you didn't analyze it for a little bit. Is that fair?
It actually, we specifically were told not to analyze it back in December, and then January rolls around and we were told, yeah, we need you to look at it.
So between the time that phone was surrendered by Ms. Soul till it got to your hands, you don't have any specific information about where it went and who looked at it.
Correct.
You don't have any specific information of who would have accessed it, or powered it up, or anything.
I would have no idea, sir. No.
You just know that you were given a phone, told to download, and that's what you guys did.
Yes, sir.
Do you have any information about when and if it was returned to Ms. Soul?
Obviously, hearsay. I was told that it was returned and how it was returned. I was even told the 3 supervisors that physically went to her and got it from her, and then they took it back. I was told where they even met physically to exchange the phone.
You referenced that at a later date you were unable to access her phone a second time.
Correct.
And the reason you were unable to access her phone a second time, by the way, what date would that have been?
I know that it was seized on the 12th, and we took possession of a lot of those phones, the evidence ones, roughly around 17th. The ones like the night of the 12th I got called out. I took custody of about 10 or 12 agency phones, but not evidence ones. So, do you want an exact date when we got her phone?
If you know, or if refreshing your reports would help you.
This 58-page report is our intake of almost every item in the case, and just give me a moment.
I got a 63-page report. Did you modify?
No, that's not the report. That's the report about the report.
Got it.
Marcia Soul iPhone.
Read that to yourself. Tell me if it refreshes your memory.
The only date that I'm showing on this is the 22nd. I don't have the other date handy. I know that we took her iPad and her computer on the 13th, because I actually went and got all that stuff from evidence.
Yes, sir.
So I would have gotten it all. Our forensic tech doesn't like people. It's just kind of funny.
Wait, did you say it doesn't like?
Yeah, she doesn't like to interact with other people. She's a computer nerd, and I go and I get all the evidence out, and I did it in this case, and I bring it back to our lab. I know it's not necessary. It's kind of funny, but it is what it is. So the only date I have on that phone currently in my report is 10/22. Again, extrapolating, I know I got all that evidence on the 13th.
So you have nothing in your report that indicates that you received Ms. Soul's phone a second time.
No. In the context of, in my narrative, yes. We don't date our digital forensic reports because they'll take days and hours. It's only the FBI and the federal cases they have to say, at 10:02 a.m. this morning, I did this. That's just crazy stuff. On my report, I do talk about the phone. I do talk about what goes on. And aside from my giant digital forensics report, I actually did complete separate sheriff's office reports. I actually did 5 separate supplements where I actually did detail some of that stuff about those phones.
The PIN code that was placed on Ms. Soul's phone, which is kind of where I'm getting to.
Okay.
Do you know when it was put on there?
No way to know without getting into the phone.
And you were, I think by your testimony, telling us that you were unable to get into the phone.
There's no currently way that anybody can get in that phone except for maybe the federal government.
Well,
right now.
How about asking Ms. Soul?
We did. I say we.
Someone did?
Someone did.
Do you know when they did?
It was a long period of time, this investigation, and it would have been then in January when I contacted Detective Gata and asked her to contact the victim, Ms. Soul.
Did you attempt the the passcode that she's familiar with, the 2210?
That was my only one time I thumb drove the phone. Yeah, I tried to enter that 2210 without result. Done, powdered off, put away, no moss.
Okay. The iPhone of Mr. Bybee, the item number 18.
Yes.
When you say you were able to determine that it was used up until the 16th, is that correct? Of
Yes.
January? So you have a history of that iPhone for the days prior?
What depends what you mean by history. I know that there were calls, there were text messages, there was use of that phone, and I know that it had to work up until the 16th because, again, you cannot do an iTunes backup without a working screen on the phone.
The IMEI number would be what? Do you have that information?
I know it ends in 3211.
So if we check item 18, it's going to say 3211 is its serial number? Is that what it is?
You have to get into the phone.
Well, what does that mean?
You actually have to have a working phone to go in there and get the IMEI number. That's imprinted on the board of the phone.
And you were able to do that though, correct?
The phone actually had other stuff on the exterior that indicated that was the phone.
Such as?
Actually, let me retract that. That was kind of what's funny about it is it did actually have 3211 on the back of the phone itself, physically. That's what keyed me in that we had the phone I was looking for the whole time. Now you bring me to a moment of clarity. Yes, it actually, because even the property sticker from the forensic tech that sees it, the home, even put on there IMEI ending 3211.
Because prior to doing your final report, you had a preliminary report, correct?
Oh, probably.
And you did some analysis of that particular phone, right?
Yeah.
Was there errors in that analysis?
Oh, there's always errors in my reports.
Okay.
That's why they're preliminary reports, and this thing is, I like voluminous. There's a lot of data in there, and you're going back and forth, and you're fixing, you're changing, you're adding, you're discovering new things, you're finding out about how something works. That's why there's supplements.
I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I'm sorry, I was just babbling then.
The most recent iPhone that you referenced was purchased or powered up by Mr. Bybee, I think on the 15th.
I believe it was the 15th, yes.
And within one day, you came to the conclusion that he made 300 calls, 2,100 chats. It's in your prior report.
I have no idea what you're talking about at this moment in time. On the new phone?
Right.
Oh, only 300? Hey, look at Tom Brady's phone. He had 15,000 text messages in a short period of time. You're saying there's only 300 messages on a phone? That's possible.
Wasn't interested in Tom Brady. I was just interested in Mr. Bybee's phone and the fact that you say that within 24-hour period he had 300 calls and 2181 chats. That's supposed to be his new phone, right?
The data is what the data is.
And call what the IMEI number was for that phone?
For the new phone?
Yes, sir.
Ended 8106, am I thinking right?
All right. I have no further questions. Thank you.
Redirect.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just briefly. Okay. Actually, they use me. Detective, we're not going to speculate, but on the 10th of December, was the defendant's device using a cell phone by Marcia Soul's residence at about 11 in the morning?
Yes, at 11:02 in the morning, it was using the very closest Verizon cell phone tower to the victim's home, to Miss Soul's home.
Defense counsel went into the amount of IP addresses associated with the defendant accessing Miss Soul's AOL account. Right?
Yes.
Remember that. Okay. Now, with that, is someone able to access multiple emails very quickly and then have multiple IP addresses associated with accessing that account?
Yes.
Okay, how so?
As I stated, you could just drill through that thing and thumb through them, finger through them, click through them, whatever you're doing. I know I looked at some other data from AOL, and I have it in front of me. It was one of the things we subpoenaed, and there were 40-second gaps. My answer is always, it depends.
Okay, so it's not necessarily that there are duplicates, but you can actually access information very quickly.
Yes.
Okay. So the fact that they're the same time doesn't mean it's a duplicate.
Correct, and to really be finite about it is if I'm going through a web page, it might take time for a web page to load, but an email is just little bitty kilobytes of data. They're such small files. It's not really that much to pull that data up on a common router these days with FiOS or whatever. You can blaze through that data. It's not like you're downloading a 500 gigabyte movie or something.
Okay. Going back to the OpenEye DVR system, Defense Counsel indicated no motion, no recording. Was there any other time in which a home of 5 people and a dog had no recording for a 16-hour period?
No, there was not.
You spoke about your report, about there's always mistakes. Are there revisions to the report and then based upon continuing investigation?
Yes, that's how it works with myself, with the Sheriff's Office of Digital Forensics, is you can't expect a digital forensic investigator to know everything or to have everything right or perfect or have all the data, or a detective will want more data. Well, I don't know if they needed my report or not, or if it's whatever it is. That's why and I like to use the case of the persistent handler. I know what one is, but I had to research that to be sure to know. I didn't really know that before this investigation for sure. That's how that January 12th at 1:22 a.m. persistent handler was triggered. I didn't know that till this.
Okay. Now, so are they really mistakes, or are they just revisions based upon continuing?
Oh, I'm sure there's Scribner's errors, mistakes in there, but it's revisions. Yeah.
Now, just briefly, Defense Counsel referred to some of these accesses to the soul's PayPal account.
Yes.
On these dates, and he said, you're not saying that the defendant did this on the 13th of December from the soul's Comcast account?
I'm saying
or at her house.
Someone at her house on using her internet access PayPal.
Right. And you have no knowledge if Ms. Soul was even present on the 13th of December.
I wasn't part of the investigation. I did an interview. I don't have the timeline, or if she was at home, or no idea.
So you don't know where she was.
And I don't want to know.
Okay.
It's not anything that's going to affect my data set.
Okay. You just know it was accessed from her home.
Correct.
I have nothing else, Judge.
Thank you. Detective, believe it or not, you can step down.
Thank you, Judge.
Thank you,
I'm
sir.
sure you're glad I'm done. Counsel, please.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to get up and move around a little, please feel free to do so. A couple of minutes. State, you may call your next witness.
State calls Brett Thomas.
Mr. Thomas.
Good afternoon, Mr. Thomas.
Good afternoon.
Will you please tell us, tell us your full name and spell your last name?
My name is Brett Thomas, Thomas.
And what is your occupation, Mr. Thomas?
I work for the Sarasota County Sheriff's Office, and I'm currently an operations supervisor.
And if you pull the microphone just a tiny bit closer and speak up just a tiny bit louder. Do you have other experience in that bureau?
Yes, I've been a 911 operator, a dispatcher, a training officer, a supervisor, a 911 systems analyst, and I'm currently an operations supervisor.
Tell the jury members a little bit about your training and experience in your profession, please.
We've been trained to operate and maintain the computer-aided dispatch system to include GPS, the 911 telephone system, Motorola radio system, as well as other systems that run the 911 center.
I'd like you to explain the GPS CAD system and how it works in the deputies' patrol cars at the Sarasota Sheriff's Office.
Each deputy is assigned a mobile data computer that's inside their vehicle. When they log on to the system, they're using a username and password that is unique only to them. They connect via an air card to the SSO network, and that network connects back to our CAD dispatch system. So when they log on to the system, we're able to view them.
Okay, and when they are logged on, does that mean that they are available to take public safety calls?
Yes, it does.
And that you can monitor each individual deputy's movements, or actually their presence at certain calls or certain locations?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Now, by virtue of logging on to that CAD system, can you actually monitor the deputy's location in real time?
Yes, we can.
The records of that CAD system that you just explained to the jury members, are they stored and saved at your facility?
Yes, they are, and they're able to be retrieved by system administrators or 911 records custodians such as myself.
How long are they stored and saved?
We saved those for 2 years.
Did you retrieve GPS CAD records in the defendant's case?
Yes, I did.
Thomas, I'm showing you what have been marked as States 23. This is a composite, Your Honor, and States 23A. Can you please look at those? And do you recognize composite 23 and states 23A?
Yes, I do.
What are they?
What we have is screenshots that were taken out of our CAD system, our eye tracker playback system. And the CD has the screenshots that we have here, as well as an Excel spreadsheet and a PowerPoint presentation that ties them all together.
And how do you recognize those?
I recognize these because they have my initials, a date, and a unique identifier representing that I'm the one that created this CD.
Do these two exhibits contain an accurate reflection of Bybee's patrol car on the dates that you were asked to retrieve those documents?
Yes, they do.
Your Honor, I'm now offering into evidence States Exhibit 23, which is a composite, and 23A.
No objection.
No objection. 23 and 23A are admitted, may be published at your discretion.
Thank you. Mr. Thomas, sit down and show the members of the jury this exhibit.
Certainly may. Mr. Thomas, feel
Thank
free
you.
to step down and do whatever is necessary for a good presentation of this exhibit.
All right, now. Now, can you please open the first file and tell us what we're looking at, Mr. Thomas?
Our first file here is a PDF file. We retrieved the record from the defendant. He was, in fact, logged in using his ID number into a specific vehicle on a certain date and time. This is broken across two files. First one from 11/28 to
Okay, you have to speak up nice and loudly now because we don't have a microphone. So we want everybody to hear you, including the court reporter. Now let's look at those 3 columns that you have. And let's look first at 11/28/2016, and next is a unit ID. Tell the members of the jury what that signifies.
Each law enforcement deputy is assigned what's called a zone number. It's a geographic area that a particular deputy will patrol. S stands for sheriff, and 5107 is the unique identifier for that geographic.
And who is that unique identifier identifying in this particular case?
The defendant's identification number would have been 2 representing the sheriff's office and 15
And is S5107 also his unit identifier?
Yes, on that particular day.
All right. Let's move on to 11/29/2016. Same unit identifier and same employee ID,
Yes, it is.
both belonging to the defendant Frank Bybee.
Yes.
December 2nd of 2016,
That would be the same for one.
December 3rd, 2016, Mr. Thomas.
Also, it's
December 7th of 2016,
also the same.
December 8th of 2016.
That's also the same.
Do you have more unit history?
This week. The second file we have here also PDF unit history. On 12/12 we have S5107 and the individual assigned to that
And December 13th, 16th, and 17th as well, those reflect the unit history and the employee ID of Frank Bybee.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you, Mr. Thomas. Let's now move on to a graphic depiction of that unit history starting on November 28th of 2017. And tell us a little bit about that, please.
What we have here is a screenshot. It's out of our iChat playback system. Committed a deputy one time to a vehicle. We track it at a duration between 15 and 30 seconds. So we're able to track everywhere they go. It's a little difficult to see, but on the top right hand side here, you can see that's the same 5107 that you saw in the previous screens. In this column right here is a time frame. Every one of these times represents between 15 and 30 seconds, and it will tell you what that duration is. This here is our map. We're able to see a geographic area. We can zoom in, we can zoom out. And the highlighted areas that we have on each one of these screenshots located right here. And you'll see one of 3 different things. So it'll say that number showing that the unit S5107 is on a particular call at that moment. You'll see the defendant's unit number, S5107, is available for the call. Or you'll see 21589 because the CAT system tracks the person or the unit, which says county units.
And for the record, we are looking at a map of Brockton Lane, and the intersecting street is Village Green Drive.
Yes,
And is that here in Sarasota, Mr. Thomas?
yes.
Now let's focus on 3296 and look at the red and white markings that are just to the, just at the top of 3296 Brockton Lane. Yes,
Right here.
yes. Tell the members of the jury what those markings mean.
What that means is every 30 seconds, every one of these lines right here will have a corresponding dot. So if we were to use our mouse and click on every single one of these as we went down, the different dots would become highlighted. We're able to see if the unit was on a call, or they're not on a call, and it tracks them for every 30 seconds.
Okay, and when we talk about units, if you would just say Mr. Bybee's unit. Okay, and just keep saying not the unit, but refer to it specifically as Mr. Bybee's unit, so there's no confusion. All right. Next screen.
This is the second arrival of that particular day.
And actually, let's go back and look at the times on the first arrival.
On this arrival right here, the first arrival that we have here, 11/28/2016, is 4:58 a.m. So we prefer
PM.
PMs.
And are you able to tell how long Mr. Bybee stayed in that location, or his patrol car stayed in that location?
Not from this particular screen, but we have a presentation that is also included in this that would show.
No, let's go through the individual arrivals on any particular day.
So in this particular day, 11/28/2016, this arrival was at 6:06 and 25 seconds p.m. We also know the unit number.
Yes, please.
11/29. We have our next arrival here. 11/29/2016 at 8:50 seconds.
Were there other arrivals by Deputy Bybee's patrol car on 11/29/2016?
Yes, it was. We show it here. We have two. So here's our graphic representation. And the time, 11/29/2016, was 1:23 and 12 seconds.
Okay. And third arrival on 11/29/2016.
You'll notice the diagram here. Here's our date and time, 5:30 and 9 seconds.
Is that the last visit by Bybee's patrol car on 11/29/2017?
Yes, it is.
Let's please move on to December 2nd, 2016.
December 2nd. We arrived at 7:22 and 15 seconds.
AM.
AM. Second arrival on that date. Was it 12:13 and 23 seconds?
Are there other arrivals on December 2nd, 2016?
Those.
Let's move on to the next date, December 3rd, 2016, please.
We show two arrivals for that day. So December 3rd, 12:18 and 41 seconds. First arrival. Second arrival for that day.
What is the next date in which you collected data for Deputy Bybee being present at Brockton Lane?
12/7.
Let's look at that series, please.
First arrival was at 2:02 and 35 seconds.
2:02 p.m.
Yes.
Thank you.
That would
Was-
be full arrival.
Was that the only visit by that patrol car? All right, let's move on to December 8th, 2016, please.
I showed that arrival was at 5:24 and 13 seconds.
Were there other arrivals on December 8th?
I know there was
All right, let's move now to December 12th of 2016, please. Was Deputy Bybee at Brockton Lane on 12/12/2016?
yes, he was. I showed that time was 5:56 and 34 seconds.
Any other visits that day?
Not on
Let's turn that to December 13th of 2016.
the 13th. I showed that we had 4 arrivals.
Let's look at the first arrival, please.
The first arrival would have been at 12:15 and 49 seconds. Yeah.
Second visit by Deputy Bybee's patrol car.
On the 13th. The second visit would have been at 12:59 and 57 seconds. Yeah. The third arrival, we showed this as a drive down the road.
Based upon your records, do you simply show a passing by 3296 and there is no stopping of the patrol car?
No,
All right, thank you. And let's move on to the fourth visit, please. On December 13th of 2016.
and that visit would have been at 5:10 and 9 seconds.
What is the next date in which Deputy Bybee is present at Brockton Lane in front of Marshall Solt's house?
You show that to 12:16. There's 2 arrivals.
All right, let's go through those, please, Mr. Thomas.
The first arrival would have been at 6:17 and 50 seconds in the morning. The second arrival was at 8:02 and 43 seconds. The third and last arrival was at 4:35 and 3 seconds.
Moving on to December 17th of 2016, were there visits by Bybee's patrol car to Brockton Lane?
I showed that there's 4
Let's look at those in chronological order, please.
Here's first visit. Should have been at 11:59 and 9 seconds. Day after the war. The second arrival of the dead was 1:47 and 2 seconds in the afternoon. The third arrival was just a drive-by. That showed that he stopped at the address. And that was at 2:12 and 52 seconds. The fourth and final arrival for that particular day was at 4:24 and 28 seconds.
Thank you. Did you gather information for any other dates besides those that were asked?
No, those were those.
All right, now you mentioned earlier to the jury that you would be able to tell the duration of those visits. Can you please move on to that
Yes.
part of your evidence?
We have a PowerPoint presentation that will time in the arrival times, screenshots, and it shows when the defendant left and arrived in the address. What we did here is we created a spreadsheet. We just read through to see the dates and times that he arrived at every particular date right here. The first arrival, he would arrive at 4:58 and 24 seconds. He received a call on a string mail, left, and then returned back to the he received the call after he had already been on scene and Brockton Lane address. And this is the time that he left Brockton Lane. He was there at that particular time for 32 minutes and 24 seconds. You know, he was there because this is the screenshot that you see. The second arrival of that day was at 6:06 p.m. and 25 seconds. He closed the very same call that he left before. He closed that call at 6:12. And then he logged off his computer was no longer in the tracking at 6:26. He was there on that particular day, the second time, for 20 minutes and 24 seconds. We know that because here was the screenshot that showed him arriving back at the second. The next day that we previously saw the screenshot, 11:29, his first arrival was at 8:50 and 8 seconds. He received a call on Nelson Lane. He left. He received that call at 9 o'clock and 26 seconds. He left at 9:04 and 31 seconds. So that particular time he was there for 14 minutes, 23 seconds.
There on Brockton Lane, not on the call in which
Yes.
he.
He was at Brockton Lane. There was a corresponding screenshot that we saw previously. His second arrival at Brockton Lane, he showed up at 1:23 and 12 seconds. He received the call, so he needed to leave the Brockton Lane address. At 1:37 is when he finally left the address. He was there for 13 minutes and 51 seconds. That particular instance, there was a screenshot. Third and final time for 11:29, he arrived at 5:30 and 9 seconds p.m. He left at 5:39 and 55 seconds. So he was on scene there at Brockton Lane for 9 minutes and 46 seconds. The next, and here is the corresponding screenshot from the next date that we have the defendant arriving to Brockton Lane was 12:02. So he arrived the first time at 7:42 and 59 seconds in the morning. He left at 8:04, 31 seconds in the morning. A total of 21 minutes and 32 seconds. This is a screenshot of the The second arrival of that day was at 12:13 and 23 seconds. He received a call for public service at 12:17 and 59 seconds. And shortly thereafter, at 12:18 and 27 seconds, he left. He was on scene the second time for 5 minutes and 4 seconds. There's date we have is 12/3/2016. His first arrival at Brockton Lane was 12:18, 41 seconds. He left at 12:35 at 38 seconds. Meaning he was at Brockton Lane for 16 minutes and 7 seconds. This was a strange calculation. The second arrival of that day was at 5:30 and 19 seconds. And he left at 5:38 and 23 seconds. So for the second arrival of that day, he was there for 8 minutes and 4 seconds.
Your Honor, do we have questions versus not?
No, I think the presentation is flowing. So go ahead, keep going the way you are.
Ladies and gentlemen, here was a strange calculation. The next date that we have here is 12/7/2016. His first arrival was at 2:02 and 35 seconds p.m. What's interesting is that the address here that he created a call at is 32/7.
Is that an actual address that exists on Brockton Lane?
That's not a valid address. In the screenshot I'm going to show you the next page, he's been responding to 3296. So he creates a call at 3270 Brockton Lane. He closes the call at 2:33:18 and he leaves at 2:33:22. He was on the scene at the time for 30 minutes, 47 seconds.
At a fictitious address?
Yes, because 3296 is the address where the law enforcement vehicle would have been sitting in front of, and the address that he created was 3270. 3270 is over here, and you can see that in the present. The next date that we have is 12/18/2016.
May I just interrupt you for a second? These records are in evidence, correct?
Yes.
All right. And so we're going through every single one of these calls, and they're all basically showing a time of arrival, a location, and time of departure.
Yes, sir.
So the jury certainly can, is there any way that we can see kind of an overview rather than going specifically to each one of these calls in order to expedite this? Or is it important that the exact time and exact date and exact time of departure are?
No, Your Honor, the exact time of departure, but those dates are very important based upon what Klay just testified to. So we can move through these more quickly, yes, of course. Let's not look at the graphic depiction, let's just go on to December.
So for our next date, 12/12, we received a call. We'll just show you his arrival. He arrived at 5:56 and 34 seconds. And he left at 6:01 and 8 seconds. He was on scene at the time, 4 minutes and 36 seconds.
Let's now move on to December 13th, please.
On the 13th, we show that he was there 4 times. You can use the screen to go through all of them at the same time. So his first arrival was at 12:15 and 49 seconds. He left at 12:18 and 20 seconds. So that particular instance, he was there for 2 minutes and 30 seconds. The second arrival at Brockton Lane was at 12:59 and 57 seconds. He left at 1:03 and 3 seconds. So he was there for 3 minutes and 6 seconds. The third arrival was at 4:36 and 6 seconds.
And that was a drive-by
That was
only,
a
correct?
drive-by only. He was there approximately a minute.
Okay, and let's look at the last arrival, please.
5:10 and 9 seconds. He left at 5:31 and 17 seconds. So 21 minutes. And 6 seconds. Here. The next date we have is the 16th. We show that there was 3 arrivals on that day. He arrived at 6:17 and 50 seconds. He left at 6:22 and 24 seconds. So you can see 4 minutes and 34 seconds. The second time he was there at 8:02 and 53 seconds. Leaving at 8:17 and 21 seconds. Total of 14 minutes and 38 seconds.
third arrival?
He arrived at 4:35 and 3 seconds p.m. Left at 4:40 and 3 seconds. Within 5 minutes. Please. Okay, the last date that we have was 12/17/2016, and we showed that he was there. The first time, 11:59 and 9 seconds. He left at 12:13 and 30 seconds. So he was present for 14 minutes and 30 seconds. The next instance, he would have arrived at 1:47 and 2 seconds, and left at 1:49 and 37 seconds. The defendant was on scene for 2 minutes and 30 seconds. The third arrival was arrived by only at 2:12 and 52 seconds. It lasted approximately 30 seconds. The final time that we tracked Deputy Bybee would have been at 4:24, 28 seconds. We showed that he left at 5:49, 6 seconds. 1 hour, 24 minutes, 38 seconds. He was there.
Thank you. And I have no further questions for Mr. Thomas.
All right, Mr. Thomas, I want to resume your position back up on the witness stand, sir. Mr. Kapir, any cross-examination? Sir.
Thomas, you ever been a road deputy?
No, sir, I have not.
Never actually been in a car and used this system yourself, have you?
I have been in a law enforcement vehicle, but I don't use the system inside the vehicle.
How do you become familiar with the use of the system? Somebody has to tell you about it, teach you?
We've received training through our CAD vendor, and we actually have a 911 academy that they run everyone through. So we've become trained on using the interior portion of the CAD system.
What does it mean when you arrive at a location and it says validate?
Can you show me an example of that?
Now, are you unfamiliar with that?
We validate an address when someone is placed onto a screen, they have to validate that it is an actual valid address.
Actually, they don't have to validate it. If they don't validate it, it automatically gives the address to the computer, right?
I'm not sure about the patrol side of the house.
Multiple deputies can arrive at the same location and the computer can assign them a different address, correct?
I'm not sure about that.
So if you're saying that 3270 Brockton Lane was a false address purposely put in by Mr. Bybee, what information do you have to verify that?
We have on the same disk, we have the detailed records of what Deputy Bybee would have typed in.
Okay, so you're telling us, even though you don't know what it means, that Deputy Bybee typed in validate or hit validate when he got to 3270 Brockton Lane?
I can show you what the record says, but I'm not sure exactly what Deputy Bybee typed in there.
You have the records with you?
They're still inside the computer there, sir.
Okay, and you're telling us that if we pull up that record on that particular day for 3270 Brockton Lane, it's going to show us that Deputy Bybee typed that in?
I believe so, yes.
Or the computer assigned it?
I couldn't tell you, sir.
Right. You're not able to tell us through any record that Deputy Bybee actually typed in 3270 Brockton Lane, are you?
No.
You've never been advised or read any of the text messages in this case?
No, sir.
You have no information, for example, on December 7th.
Objection beyond the scope of direct.
What is the date you're referring to, Mr. Kapir?
December 17th, 2016.
That was
That was the last date.
the last date to which he was referring, so
Yes, and that,
the objection is overruled.
do you have any information that Ms. Soul was actually there on that date?
No, sir, I wasn't there.
Thank you, sir.
Any redirect?
No.
Mr. Thomas, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Subject to recall, folks, or not?
Not by the state.
Not from the defense.
All right, so you're released from your subpoena. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
All right, well, we've put in a long day, ladies and gentlemen. I think it's time to adjourn. See you all again tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. Please march forth with the same admonitions of the accompanying and research. Don't get any news reports or lecture daily live. We'll be back to you tomorrow. Thank you. Mary David? All right, any issues before we adjourn for the day?
Just other than we're gonna take the one witness out of order, mornings to one of the doctors. That should be 30, 45 minutes max.
May I know what time so I can
Sure. Do you want to, what time is the
I
doctor?
told her to be there at 9 tomorrow morning.
I have a set night that has to go back to work.
All right, Ken,
Sorry.
how long is this witness going to be?
Well, it depends on cross-examination, but I expect to have her on direct for 20 minutes.
All right.
Do you know who the witness is?
Oh, yes.
Tanya Thomas?
She can, our witness can wait. If we tell her to be here at 9, it probably should work out.
That's fine.
Okay.
Should be a legislation.
All right, fine. We'll take it right after Ms. Thomas's testimony then.
Yes, sir.
All right, very good. Any other issues? If not, I wish you all a good evening. We'll see you tomorrow morning. Once again, I will be available at 8:30 if any issues arise. Or thereabouts, depending on the stoplights. And I'll be available if any issues do come up. I'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sean.